GB News because it's the people's channel and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
Is the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216,
Freeview Channel 236,
And YouView, channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Minister's deal with France, a game changer, will be asking the leader of UKIP, Neil Hamilton, to untangle the agreement. Should trans women have been included in International Women's Day celebrations? We'll be debating that with top journalist Nicole Lampert. And as the news has just broken that Gary Lineker will be stepping back from Match of the Day this weekend, we'll speak to former Premier League star footballer Hal Robinson-Kanu. Lots to get through. It is a Lineker on the brink special. But first, the headlines with someone that could never be fired, Tatiana Sanchez.
Mark, thank you very much. Good evening. This is the latest from the GB newsroom. And as you've just been hearing, the BBC has told Gary Lineker to step back from presenting Match of the Day until an agreement has been reached on his social media usage. It follows comments he made on Twitter criticising the government's new asylum policy. He likened the language used to that of 1930s Germany. In a statement, the broadcaster said, "We've never said that Gary can't have a view on issues that matter to him, but he should keep well away from taking sides on party political issues or political controversies." Bec2, the largest union in the BBC, has called it deeply concerning and is accusing the broadcaster of bowing to political pressure. While football commentators Alan Shearer and Ian Wright have said on Twitter they won't join tomorrow's show in a move of solidarity with Mr Lineker. And in other news, Rishi Sunak has agreed to give France almost £500 million over the next 3 years in an attempt to end the Channel migrant crisis. The Prime Minister held talks with French President Emmanuel Macron in Paris today before announcing the landmark deal, which will see a new detention centre established in France. The joint news conference followed the first bilateral summit between the two countries in 5 years. Mr Sunak says the new illegal migrant legislation introduced this week supports this new deal.
We're announcing a new detention centre in northern France, a new command centre bringing our enforcement teams together in one place for the first time, and an extra 500 new officers patrolling French beaches. all underpinned by more drones and other surveillance technologies that will help ramp up the interception rate. And the legislation the UK has introduced this week supports this, because it's designed to break the business model of the criminal gangs and remove the pull factors bringing them to the Channel coast.
Heavy snowfall left drivers stranded for hours this morning, with people now being asked to only travel if necessary. Storm Larissa hit the UK overnight, causing flights to be suspended and rail services delayed as fallen trees blocked some rail lines. The Met Office has yellow warnings for snow and ice in place for large parts of the UK over this coming weekend. Now, a hostage situation has been unfolding in the German city Karlsruhe. Details are still unclear, but police say there's no danger to the wider public. We'll have more on that as we get it. It follows the mass shooting at a Jehovah's Witness hall in Hamburg yesterday, where at least 8 people died, including a woman and her unborn baby. Police say the gunman, German national Philip F., acted alone. He later took his own life. The motives are still unknown. They say the 35-year-old was a former member of the Jehovah's Witness community. He had no criminal record and possibly suffered from mental illness. And Prince Edward has been named as the new Duke of Edinburgh. The title has been granted by his brother, King Charles, on the Prince's 59th birthday. He'll hold that title for his lifetime. The Duke made his first official visit to the Scottish capital today. His wife, Sophie, becomes the Duchess of Edinburgh. TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News. Now it's back to Mark Dolan tonight.
Thanks, Tatiana. We'll see you in an hour's time. Welcome to Mark Dolan tonight as Rishi Sunak battles it out with Macron in Paris. Could the Prime Minister's migrant deal with France be a game changer? We'll be joined by the leader of UKIP, Neil Hamilton. Neil Hamilton live on the show to discuss whether this could move the dial politically for Rishi Sunak and whether it's a game changer in terms of his plan to stop the boats. Should trans women have been included in International Women's Day celebrations? A journalist who's written for some of the world's premier outlets, Nicole Lampert, joins me shortly. Plus, does anyone still care about the Oscars? And as Gary Lineker steps back from presenting Match of the Day this weekend, could this be the end of his career at the BBC? Should it be? We'll speak to former Premier League star Hal Robson-Kani. In my big opinion, my first on-air reaction to Gary Lineker's remarks about the migrant crisis and the need for his suspension from this week's Match of the Day. In the big question, after Sunak announces this illegal immigration bill, is the government's migrant plan immoral? And in the news agenda with my panel, should the age of drinking be raised to 21? And are Brits abroad an embarrassment? We'll discuss that with my fantastic guests tonight. In my take at 10, Harry and Meghan endlessly attack the monarchy, but are too happy to accept their privileged titles, including calling their daughter Princess. The hypocrisy of this couple is unlimited. So this is Mark Dolan tonight. A very busy show. Put something cold and fizzy in the fridge. After all, it's Friday night. With any luck, you've got the kids in bed. Let's have a debate. Let's have a stimulating argument. And let's have some fun along the way. Lots to get through. We'll start with this. So Rishi Sunak will pay France £478 million in a deal to finally bring an end to the small boats crisis. Following crunch talks in Paris today, French President Emmanuel Macron agreed to deploy 500 more cops on beaches where dangerous channel crossings start. And the president announced the opening of a new detention centre to help French border force cope with the masses of migrants being trafficked by people smugglers around the world. In return for the £500 million, France will also form a new highly trained and permanent mobile policing unit dedicated to illegal migration. High-end drones, helicopters, planes and fresh surveillance tech will be used to ramp up intelligence sharing between British and French forces. And all French efforts to tackle small boats will be overseen by a 24/7 zonal coordination centre where permanent UK liaison officers will be based. So here's the question, will it work? Let's get reaction from the leader of UKIP, Neil Hamilton. Neil, Rishi Sunak has made it one of his 5 pledges to stop the boats. Will the forthcoming legislation in the House of Commons and this deal with France do the trick?
Well, no. Certainly this deal with France today won't do the trick. You know, £500 million to carry on doing what's been totally ineffective for the last 5 years. The only thing that will stop the boats coming across is if we intercept them, or if they reach our shores, return all the migrants on those boats back to France. But Macron said right at the start of proceedings that that wasn't going to happen. They weren't even going to discuss it. So it can't work. We'll have 500 extra officials to police a 70-mile line of beaches. I mean, it's a nonsense. It's like trying to fill a sieve with water. It simply can't be effective. The politicians throughout the whole of Europe are in denial about the scale of migration. We had 50,000 in small boats coming across the Channel last year. We've had 3,000 this year already. And the pull factors for the migrants are far too great to allow these sort of sticking plaster solutions to work. So for all the pawing and stroking of bottoms and mutual masturbation on the platform of the two little globalist international bankers, Sunak and Macron, nothing is going to happen. And Macron said, he had the gall to say that all these problems are actually a consequence of Brexit. Well, of course, they're not, because one of the reasons why Macron is refusing to take back migrants who cross the Channel illegally from France is because he's got a dispute with Italy going on, because Italy is refusing to take the migrants that are flowing from Italy into France. So the much vaunted Dublin Convention, which is supposed to be the answer of the EU to all this illegal migration, is simply not working even inside the EU. So politicians have just got to get a grip. And the reason why the bill going through the House of Commons won't work is because the European Convention on Human Rights will stand in the way and block its effect.
Well, let's go through this methodically, bit by bit. You are, after all, a lawyer as well as a politician, Neil. I watched the press conference with keen interest as it was carried live and uninterrupted on GB News. I missed the bottom stroking, so I look forward to the X-rated version at some point. However, the detention centre built on French soil is surely a win for Sunak.
Yeah, well, if they can manage to capture and detain these migrants. But I mean, the numbers are just so great that you know, it may have some marginal effect, but it's not going to solve the problem. You know, there are hundreds of millions of people in Africa and the Middle East and elsewhere who want to come to Europe. And they're desperate to get in, and nothing will stop them ultimately, unless we decide upon really draconian measures. And certainly the scale of what's been agreed today is nothing like what is needed to police the French beaches. There are sand dunes all down that Normandy coast, which are tailor-made for hiding in, and migrants are trying to get across the Channel in tiny little boats that are very easy to construct and very lightweight to transport onto the beaches. And they'll do this 24 hours a day. You know, we've seen arrivals on our beaches at dawn. So they've been paddling across the Channel in the dark, you know, which is a fantastically stupid and dangerous thing to do. But nevertheless, they're so desperate to get across the Channel, they will be prepared to do it. And this is happening in the Mediterranean as well. Of course, Italy has got a massive problem. Greece has got a massive problem. But the EU will simply not steel itself to do what is necessary to sort it out, because they're all actually consumed ultimately by the ideas which are in the European Convention on Human Rights, which is a document that was designed to deal with the problems of 70 years ago, not the problems of today. And it's not fit for purpose.
Neil, much as you'd like it, many of my viewers and listeners would like it, turning the boats back to France is not going to happen anytime soon. But Sunak is nobody's fool. He wants to be re-elected. And of course, Boris Johnson achieved victory in 2019 by getting Brexit done. Well, Sunak has identified stopping the boats as a potentially game-changing policy. So he will want to have some success with that. Do you think he'd be willing to ditch our membership of the European Convention on Human Rights in order to make it happen?
No, of course not. And he's made that absolutely clear. When Suella Braverman was musing about this just a few weeks ago, Sunak slapped her down straight away. He himself was musing about it some time ago, and I said then it'll never happen. He'll never agree to it. No. I mean, he is a little globalist international banker, and he isn't going to have the guts to leave a convention which has long outlived its purpose. Why do we need to be in the European Convention on Human Rights when countries like Australia and New Zealand and Canada have had very liberal governments in the last few years, can manage to have their own human rights laws which they're satisfied with? No, we don't. But if we could tweak the convention to suit the conditions of today, then nobody would object to the provisions of that document. But we can't do that because the European Court of Human Rights actually makes the law, and the convention is very, very difficult, if not impossible, to amend. And Sunak is just not up to the job. If we had Thatcher as Prime Minister, it's a battle that we might start and win. But, Sunak is no Thatcher. I mean,
however, former government chief lawyer Robert Buckland, former government chief lawyer Robert Buckland told me on this programme that our membership of the European Convention on Human Rights is a red herring and that ditching it wouldn't make a difference. And I just want to revisit this issue that the Prime Minister knows that the stopping the boats policy is a potentially existential threat to him. Get it right, he wins the next election. Get it wrong, and he doesn't. Are you honestly saying that he's that duplicitous that he would be willing to essentially lie to the British people, giving the impression he'll stop the boats when he never will?
Well, he's either duplicitous or delusional. Take your choice. Either way, he's screwed, isn't he? Because he's not going to do what is necessary to solve the problem. And merely putting down on paper a wish list of things that you'd like to happen isn't going to ensure that they do happen. And so unless we can actually stop the boats by returning the migrants who get to these shores, then he's not going to solve the problem.
Neil, I was in a good mood when I started the show. It is Friday night. You probably haven't had your first gin and tonic yet. Is there anything positive about this agreement with France today? Oh, there it is. There you go. His glass is a quarter full. Is there anything positive from the deal with Macron today? Is there anything positive about the forthcoming legislation to stop the boats?
Well, I wish that the legislation which has been proposed would be effective. I personally do believe that Suella Braverman wants to and would, if she had the power, solve the problem. But the trouble is, she's not the Prime Minister, and most of the cabinet don't have the will to do what is necessary. Today's deal, doesn't set us back. And of course, I want good relations with France. But good relations are of no consequence unless the French are prepared to agree to what would sort the problem out. They don't want all these migrants on the Normandy coast either. I mean, the communities on the other side of the Channel feel in the same way as the people who live in Kent and Sussex do. So I don't understand why France and Britain bilaterally can't do a deal on this.
OK, well, Neil, ask Christine to open another bottle of Jacob's Creek and we'll catch up soon. Thank you so much for your time. Look, Neil speaks with authority. He's a lifelong Eurosceptic. He's the leader of UKIP and he's a lawyer as well. He's not happy with this deal with France. It's throwing good money after bad, he says, and it's counterproductive. Let me know your reaction, Mark at gbnews.uk. Well, let's talk about Gary Lineker before 9 o'clock. Tonight's show is a Gary Lineker on the Brink special. He has stepped aside from his presenting duties on Match of the Day this weekend. Do his comments threaten the reputation of the BBC? Should he go altogether, or is he exercising free speech? Before 9, we'll speak to Hal Robson-Kanu, former top Premier League star. But next up, does anyone still care about the Oscars? And also, should trans women have been recognised on International Women's Day? Or is that another example of women being cancelled? We'll speak to a top journalist about that next.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216,
Freeview Channel 236,
and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit off.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
Is the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Should Gary Lineker step down permanently as the host of Match of the Day? Tonight, Mark Dolan tonight is a Lineker on the Brink special. I've spoken to producer Cal and producer Mark. We've torn up the running order because this guy has become very political. Of course, I'm the king of free speech, but not for somebody that's the face of an organisation which is paid for by public tax. So we'll debate Gary Lineker before the end of the hour with Premier League star Hal Robson-Kanu and in my big opinion at 9 o'clock. But this week, International Women's Day came and went, but with many complaining that so-called gender ideology, which challenges the idea of biological sex, is ultimately erasing women altogether. There's talk of the Oscars becoming gender neutral. The Labour MP Jess Phillips read out a list of women murdered by men this year, but included a trans woman on the list. And in the White House, Dr. Jill Biden, the wife of the president, handed out a Courageous Woman of the Year award to a biological male who identifies as female. Is this progress, or is it setting women back decades? To discuss this and some of the other big stories of the day, I'm delighted to welcome Nicole Lampert, who has written for The Metro, The Jewish Chronicle and The New York Post. Hi, Nicole.
Hello.
Great to have you on the show. Did you raise an eyebrow when you saw Jess Phillips making her statement, making her speech in the House of Commons, including a trans woman?
I did. I felt quite sorry for her, though, because I think whatever happened, she couldn't get it right or wrong. And it's awful that this list became the centre of the kind of culture wars.
Because what she was doing, it wasn't a bad thing, drawing attention to anyone that's been murdered.
It's a brilliant thing because every year she reads out a list of all the women that have died at the hands of men. And for often it's the only chance that they're kind of named publicly. She invites their families to come and listen to her. And it's a kind of public acknowledgement of the problems that women still have in terms of violence against women, and the fact that between 2 and 3 women are killed every week by a man, often by one she knows.
And so props to her for drawing attention to these horrific, appalling and tragic crimes. However, the likes of feminist campaigner Kelly J. Keane has said that this was political opportunism, and this list of women tragically murdered did not justify the inclusion of a trans woman. Of course, that's somebody that's a biological male who identifies as female.
Well, the inclusion of the girl that died, the trans girl that died, it was controversial for several reasons, and one of them is that the femicide list is for women who've been killed by men, and proceedings are still active in terms of who murdered this child, but the 2 people that have been charged with it are a boy and a girl who are both children themselves. So it's not the same as the other murders, and the sad thing is that this row over it has completely taken over the whole list, the whole reason for the list.
Indeed. I mean, some people are just saying, can't women have their own list for something? I mean, you've got Dr. Jill Biden handing out Courageous Women of the Year awards in the White House to, again, somebody that's a biological intact male who identifies as female. It's a difficult conversation to have because you don't want to come across or be characterised as transphobic. At the same time, I'm just wondering where we go with this and what's going to happen to women and their hard-fought rights.
It feels a bit like International Women's Day has almost become International Trans Women Day, in that there are hardly any trans women. If you look at how many there are in the country, there's probably 100,000, 200,000. But they're being put front and centre of every International Women's Day advert and awards, things like that. And that does feel like, can't women just have one day? And it's fine if trans women should enjoy International Women's Day as much as other women, but they don't have to be front and centre of it all, because it just feels like for women who don't believe trans women are the same as other women, it feels offensive.
Speaking of which, gender-neutral Oscars, is that progress?
Definitely not. As we've seen with the Brits, that it just means that there's less women that are going to be nominated. Just like in the music industry, the film industry has a problem with women. I don't think there's only been 2 female directors, or maybe only 1 that have ever won an Oscar. So if they do this, then we will see less women on the list.
Are you looking forward to the Oscars?
Not really.
I mean, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Of course, let's remind ourselves of what happened last year, Nicole. The infamous slap. Take it away, Cal.
Oh, wow! Wow!
I think we might have the response from Chris Rock, the comedian. Chris Rock just released a stand-up comedy special. Have we got that, Cal? Hope I'm not...
It happened. I got smacked like a year ago. And a lot of people go, Chris, how come you didn't do nothing back? How come you didn't do nothing back that night? I got parents. And you know what my parents taught me? Don't fight in front of white people.
Absolutely hilarious. The question is, was that slap good or bad for the Oscars, Nicole?
I think it's seen as bad. I think it was good because the Oscars have got so boring. And you were talking about Gary Lineker, and of course, the Oscars celebrities, when they win awards, they want to go and spout their political stuff. And that's been a massive turn-off every year. Oscars, there are fewer and fewer people watch the Oscars.
Yeah.
So
I mean, what they need is Ricky Gervais as host, don't they?
Well, exactly. That's kind of what that's kind of what Chris Rock was doing, and that he was roasting the celebrities, and it was quite funny. But then, of course, this mad moment, a kind of one-in-a-generation moment where he gets hit for what he says, is quite astounding.
It's a shocker. Has it permanently damaged Will Smith's career? I mean, is Smith's career over as a result of the slap?
I don't think it's over. It probably has damaged it, and we certainly see the human behind the man, which is both good and bad. We know how hurt he is, and he's shown that hurt in the aggression that he's shown on TV.
Does it demonstrate how bonkers these people in Hollywood are?
Well, maybe just that they are normal.
We're supposed to envy them, aren't we? But
we are meant to envy them. I think this is part of the problem with the Oscars, that we kind of know these celebrities and who they are now because they do reality shows, they're on Instagram, they're telling us their points of view all the time. So the magic of the Oscars has disappeared.
I think that's a really, really fair point. I mean, it was always this venerated showbiz occasion with dancers and singers and amazing glitter and pomp. And now, as you say, it's just an ego fest and quite controversial. Isn't another problem that people don't watch movies in the numbers they used to, that it's all Netflix and box set series?
Well, there's that, but people do watch movies, but they watch all the Marvel films. They're kind of easy to make, they don't require much thought, and they do really well at the box office, and that's the problem. So they've kind of increased the category of Best Picture so that they do at least have some box office hits. So Avatar was one of the biggest hits in the box office, and that's a Best Film category, but it probably won't win. So the problem is, do you remember the days of Titanic where you had the best film was also the most popular film of the year? And that's really unlikely to happen. And that's partly to do with the streaming services. So people and of course the pandemic had a massive impact. But people, if they're going to spend their money to go to the cinema, then they want to see something special.
Last but not least, I know you're not the biggest fan of the government's forthcoming legislation on migration and the migrant crisis, but what's your reaction to Gary Lineker's invoking of the Second World War and the Holocaust into the debate?
I'm really unhappy with it. I'm just unhappy with anyone that invokes the Holocaust. And although people say he's not invoking the Holocaust, but 1930s Germany, you don't need to talk about that because of what it led to. But he's not talking about the historical... There are so many historical factors that went into the Holocaust, not least thousands of years of anti-Semitism. So if he wanted to invoke something, he could have invoked the fact that when Jewish people were trying to escape from the Nazis, many countries, including Britain, closed their doors.
Yeah, which is the most tragic and awful stain on our history. You are a Jewish person, Jewish journalist. So, I mean, how do you think that this story has gone down within the Jewish community? Have you got your sort of finger on the pulse as to how it's been received? Because it seems to be these days that Hitler gets invoked in a lot of debates, especially if the other side don't agree with the point being made.
Well, they kind of say, you know, if you have to invoke Hitler or the Nazis, then you've already lost the argument, because something has to be really terrible to be compared to that. And it has to be something really evil. And if you keep invoking things that aren't that, if you keep saying things like the Tories are Nazis, then you're actually denigrating what happened in the Holocaust and what happened to not only to Jewish people, but also what the Nazis did to many other minority groups.
Absolutely. Look, it's been a thrill to have you in the studio.
Thank you for having me.
Come and see us again really soon. I promise you more jolly stories next time.
Thank you.
The news agenda, pretty dark tonight, I think you'll agree. And pretty dark for Gary Lineker, who is in trouble. He's been suspended by the Beeb for his comments about the government's migrant policies. He has been suspended. He's been benched by the Beeb. He won't be presenting Match of the Day this weekend. What's your reaction, Mark at gbnews.uk? After this, reaction from top former Premier League star and Wales international Hal Robson-Kanu. That's next.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything, I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media.
We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss? Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island's story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Welcome to Mark Dolan tonight and a Lineker on the Brink special. Gary Lineker, the topic of my big opinion at 9, and I'm not pulling my punches. Gary Lineker is stepping back from his duties as Match of the Day presenter, according to the BBC in an official statement. Lineker will not present the show until an agreement is reached on social media use. It comes after the presenter said yesterday that he would be presenting Match of the Day tomorrow, as usual, after several days of intense criticism over his Twitter posts about the government's asylum seeker policy. A tweet from Lineker had suggested he was not reprimanded by the BBC for his comments about the small boats policy, despite criticism from some politicians. So is this the right decision? Let's get reaction now. Former Wales international, Premier League star Hal Robson-Kanu. Hi, Hal.
Hi, Mark. How are you doing?
I'm really well. Great to have you on the show. What do you think of Gary Lineker's comments, in particular referencing Germany and the Second World War in relation to this migrants policy?
Yeah, I think obviously in terms of Gary Lineker's comments, I think they're obviously being taken in the sense of, you know, how they've come across. You know, when you're referencing, you know, Germany in its past, it's always going to be a very difficult and, of course, sensitive subject. But I think, you know, diving deeper into it, you want to be asking the questions as to, you know, why did Gary Lineker say what he said? And I think when you look at the support which has come out in favour of Gary Lineker, when you look at the likes of Ian Wright, Alan Shearer, Jermaine Genius, and even the infamous Piers Morgan, all supporting Gary Lineker and what he has said and his position, I think fundamentally what we're seeing here is a support of free speech. And, you know, BBC's comments around the need to not censor, but agree what Gary Lineker can or cannot post on social media, ultimately is, you know, bordering free speech rights, because ultimately Gary Lineker is an individual, he's a human being, and if he chooses to link wartime Nazi Germany to a decision made by the current government, then I think the question needs to be why, you know, and dive deeper into understanding, you know, why is this such a significant topic for Gary Lineker to make such a link? And I think that's ultimately what's been missed. I think now, obviously, with the furore which has kicked off, when you look, he's not going to be presenting Match of the Day tomorrow. Who's going to stand in for Gary Lineker? I think this is going to be a pivotal moment in Match of the Day, a pivotal moment in the BBC's, streaming of and broadcasting of football. And, ultimately, I think it shows the significance that not only free speech and government, but also what we see in terms of the support and across the globe in terms of individual free speech rights.
Of course. I mean, Hal, the issue is that he is perhaps the face of the BBC, its best paid star. He's the presenter of Match of the Day. Is it helpful for the organisation, for the BB, the national state broadcaster, which is paid for from a tax, the licence fee, is it helpful for him to take a view on such a divisive issue?
Yeah, so that's the question. Should he have a political position? I think that's what your question is ultimately. Yeah. And as we said before, do we have free speech or not, regardless of who you're working for, what your association is? Surely there should be an element of being able to speak what is on your mind, talking about what's right or wrong, whether that's right or wrong in the grand scheme of things, or whether that's what you feel is right or wrong. As I said before, I think actually being able to communicate that and understand why someone is taking that position is the most important aspect. And I think that's fundamentally what's been missed here. So, yeah, I think, as I said, it's certainly a pivotal time. It's a difficult time as well when it comes to BBC's broadcasting. As I said, the likes of, big names coming out in support of Gary Lineker and against the decision that the BBC have made. And ultimately, I think, it opens up the need for open debate, open discussion, and the ability to have an open and transparent platform. Again, you said beforehand, you wrote out that speech in terms of what Gary Lineker, his position before he was ultimately removed from his position at the BBC, whether it's in the interim or the long term. He was very much thinking that he was going to be in that position and he was going to present Match of the Day. And it's only that we've recently found out that he was asked to step back. And again, I think that's not necessarily very open. If BBC are asking Gary Lineker to step back, they should be open about it. And I think, again, it dives into deeper questions.
Indeed. You're clearly an excellent broadcaster, a great communicator, as well as a great footballer, Hal. Would you consider stepping in and hosting the show tomorrow night?
Well, I'm not currently qualified as a presenter, so regardless if I wanted to or not, I don't think I would have the remit to do so. But there's going to be a number of presenters who certainly will turn down this opportunity. And again, whether it's through solidarity, whether it's through the support of free speech, I think, as I said, it's unprecedented in BBC terms, certainly, particularly from a footballing broadcasting perspective. But look, I think it's a topic which is certainly a sensitive topic, but one which, for me, I feel needs to be discussed at a deeper level. Again, we're talking about politics. We're talking about, the right wing's position in terms of being able to remove someone like Gary Lineker. We're then talking about, the left wing's position. Well, actually, are both wings the same wings of the same bird? I think there needs to be open discussion and actually a level playing field drawn.
Although, Hal, look, you've had a very distinguished career as a player, international player, of course. 46 caps for Wales in the senior squad, 4 in the under-21s. Reading, West Brom, Arsenal. It's been a great career and you've entertained many thousands of fans. Do football fans really want all of this politics? Do they want to debate the migrant crisis or rainbow flags, rainbow armbands and taking the knee? Is there a place for politics in football, or do people just want to enjoy the game?
It's a great question. Look, I think fans, supporters around the world, they're supporters. You know, they're not supporting politics. They're not supporting, various different parties. They are supporting the game. And so, of course, when it comes to match of the day, whether it's match of the day, Sky Sports, ITV's coverage, whatever it is, they're tuning in to watch the beautiful game of football. Now, again, the correlation between football and politics, is there one? One could debate there isn't. And actually, the fact that Gary Lineker's position is such as whatever it is, again, we're talking about free speech, free rights, an open and honest area where you can have a position regardless of, your stance, etc. Should that mean that he's relinquished of his role in terms of presenting to millions of people on a weekly basis the beautiful game which they're tuning in to watch? I think one could debate that actually he probably should still have the role and still be presenting. So, as I said, look, I think there's a lot of people who have differing views. Again, it's all about, what we see here is ultimately division. It's division. It's opposite sides. It's creating controversy, and all that does is stir the pot, entertain. People will tune in to watch that. We'll get the views. We'll get the hits. But actually, is that solving anything? Is anything coming of it? Who's to say it is?
Hal, what a treat to have you on the show. A very, very interesting set of views, and I'll definitely reflect on those, and I'll ask my viewers to respond, Mark at gbnews.uk. I mentioned all the teams you've played for. A fantastic number of appearances for West Brom, 143 between 2016 and 2021. What's next for you? Would you like one more opportunity in football?
No, I founded a company called the Turmeric Co. in 2018, and we're delivering health-based, functional turmeric shots to people in all different walks of life.
Wow!
We're partners with over 40 elite sports teams, but also subscribers of grandparents, parents, and teenagers as well. So that's my focus. I'm CEO of the company. I run that company, and we're privileged to be making a positive difference in society through nutrition in the form of our functional turmeric-based shots.
Well, listen, I'm all over that, because turmeric is a really great little herb, isn't it? It's anti-inflammatory. It's great for health.
It is indeed, yeah, and it's been used for millennia in ancient parts of the world, and what we've done is created a convenient solution which is changing people's lives for the better. We've had over 10,000 positive customer reviews of the product, really changing people's lives, whether that's through increased energy, whether it's through reducing arthritis, or whether it's through pain relief and the reduction of inflammation. However, it is a food, it's not a medicine, but we're firm believers that, food can be our medicine, and certainly what we put into our bodies does have an impact on health. And when you look at society, when you look at, the ailments around the world, we've never had more levels of, high levels of heart disease, high levels of obesity. And when you look at our, food industry, when you look at the highly processed foods that are offered to young people, processed foods, fast foods, high fat, high sugar foods, there's a reason why we're experiencing the levels of disease that we are today. 1 in 4 kids leave primary school obese, and there's a reason for that. So, look, we're looking to make a positive change on society through functional natural nutrition.
Well, I'm really glad that I asked. This is the Turmeric Co., yeah?
Correct, yes.
Yeah. There you go, the turmeric.co. Check out their website. It's not quackery, folks. Turmeric really is good for you. And if Hal's anything to go by, then he's a perfect advert for it. Hal, we'll catch up soon. Thank you for helping us tackle those challenging issues. Hal Robson-Kanu, former Wales international, former West Brom star as well, Reading and Arsenal. No one's perfect. Thanks, Hal. Catch up soon. It is a very, very busy couple of hours to come. My Mark Meets guest is Coronation Street star Shane Ward. Can't wait for that one. But next up, we've got more big stories, and let me tell you that we do not rest on our laurels. We've got clips of the week and your emails. See you in 2.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing. We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion, and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
Your emails are shortly, but first, this. Yes, it's time for Clips of the Week, 7 days of highs and lows on the People's Channel. And we start with Patrick Christie's, who was discussing the extreme weather we've seen over the last few days. Snowfall cancelling events, cars stuck for hours on motorways. It's been chaos.
But the snow wasn't bad news for everyone. Oh, here we go. Look at that little dog running around there. Anyway, if you're listening on radio, that's a dog in the snow. I am joined now, though, by Paul Hawkins, who's drawn the short straw and has got the job of standing out in the freezing cold in Grassington in Yorkshire, where it looks like it's been raining.
Yeah, technically we're in Skipton.
Perfect. What a quintessential GB News broadcast. We had a dog, we had the only reporter in the UK who couldn't find any snow, and Patrick couldn't get the name of the town right. Keep up the good work, gents. Up next, Jacob Rees-Mogg doesn't hold back about his contempt for a certain political group. Take a look.
After the break, we'll be hearing from our distinguished panel on the disaster that is HS2. Stick around to hear about the latest blunder. You don't want to go anywhere unless you're a socialist.
Classic stuff. Indeed, he's so right about the socialists. The Conservatives would never lock us in our homes, pay everyone not to go to work, tank the economy by printing money and try and silence free speech. Thank goodness the socialists aren't in charge. Now to the point, I'm really enjoying Bev and Andrew together, and I love how no matter what the story, Andrew Pearce is always really engaged.
Pursuit of pleasure, so taking the liberty, and I'm all in favour of freedom and freedom of choice, and pursuing casual sex as a manifestation of that, and then the taking control of one's life in avoiding pain to the point of avoiding, and taking control of one's death. So from a point of view of the impact, it is a confusing time, and I think this is highlighting some malaise of society in a certain way. I mean, we know divorce rates going.
There he is, on the edge of his seat. Bev and Andrew are back on Monday at 9. We saved our best till last. This interview went viral with over 1 million views in 2 days. Steve N. Allen interviewed a lawyer who accidentally outed himself as being approached by Matt Hancock. Wait until the last few seconds. It's comedy gold.
Joining me to discuss this is none other than media and crisis PR lawyer Jonathan Code, who was actually recently asked to act for Matt Hancock. Thank you for joining me.
Yes, I have to say that's disappointing, because I made it absolutely clear to your programme. I asked them not to disclose that. And that is very, very poor journalism.
Just been given the actual email that you sent to my producer, which they'd like me to read out. As a courtesy to the lady who approached me to act for Matt Hancock, I would be grateful if it was mentioned that he asked me to act for him. So it seems that you actually...
You're absolutely right that it's my mistake. I missed out the knot. I take all of that back. My abject apologies. You're right and I'm wrong. No, fair dues. I'm absolutely wrong about that. My apologies.
The ultimate mic drop moment in TV. And those are your clips of the week. Now, this is a Mark Dolan Tonight Lineker on the Brink special. The emails are flooding in. Gary Lineker is the topic of my big opinion in just a few minutes' time. But let's get some email responses. Patricia says, Mark, I say good riddance to Lineker. There are plenty of capable presenters to replace him. H says, Mark, the hypocrisy of the BBC is that they would have sacked factual and valid comments about Islam and Muslims, but cry free speech if derogatory comments are made about non-Muslims and other religions. Those crying free speech need to be told that the taxpayers then need a free choice of deciding not to pay the licence fee and therefore make their own choices. Chrissy, let's have a look at this. Chrissy says, Mark, it was a lie. You cannot compare us, the people, and the government to the Nazis. Not putting illegal migrants in gas chambers, but 4-star hotels. We just cannot cope with the numbers in our small country. Thank you for that, Chris. So let me get this right, says Harry. The lefties are getting behind deluded Lineker about his Nazi comments, and they say he should be allowed to say that. But when MP Andrew Bridgen quotes a South African doctor in a tweet about vaccine harms, that's wrong. Thank you, Harry, there, for pointing out some double standards. We also have this from Proton, who says, Mark, as a fervent supporter of free speech, the BBC are guilty of preventing debate on many issues in the last 3 nightmare years. Their suspension of Lineker is consistent with their shameful policy. I don't give a toss about Lineker and co. Plenty of presenters who can handle what is ultimately an easy job. We'll get to many more of your emails shortly, mark@gbnews.uk. We've got a massively busy 2 hours to come. Has Russell Brand lost the plot? Should the age of drinking be raised to 21? And in my take at 10, Harry and Meghan endlessly attack the monarchy, but are too happy to accept their privileged titles, including calling their daughter Princess. The hypocrisy of this couple is unlimited. But I'm dealing with Gary Lineker next. Here's the topic of my big opinion. I'm not pulling my punches. I want to hear your views. Mark at gbnews.uk, but my thoughts next.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
On-air reaction to Gary Lineker's remarks about the migrant crisis and the need for his suspension from this weekend's match of the day. My Mark Meets guest is Shane Ward, who became a household name when he won the second series of The X Factor and went on to have a Christmas #1, and he even did a stint in Coronation Street. Shane Ward, live after 10. In the big question, is the government's migrant plan immoral? We'll hear from all sides on that one. Plus, my take at 10 on the hypocrisy of Harry and Meghan calling their daughter Princess, even though they hate the royal family. Plus the papers at 10:30 sharp, lots to get through. But first, the headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Mark, thank you and good evening. This is the latest from the GB newsroom. The BBC has told Gary Lineker to step down from presenting Match of the Day until an agreement has been reached on his social media usage. It follows comments he made on Twitter criticising the government's new asylum policy. He likened the language used that of 1930s Germany. In a statement, the broadcaster said, "We've never said that Gary can't have a view on the issues that matter to him, but he should keep well away from taking sides on party political issues or political controversies." Bectu, the largest union in the BBC, has called it deeply concerning and is accusing the broadcaster of bowing to political pressure. Football commentators Alan Shearer and Ian Wright have said on Twitter they won't join tomorrow's show in a move of solidarity with Mr Lineker. Well, in other news, Rishi Sunak has agreed to give France almost £500 million over the next 3 years in an attempt to end the Channel migrant crisis. The Prime Minister held talks with French President Emmanuel Macron in Paris today before announcing the landmark deal, which will see a new detention centre established in France. The joint news conference followed the first bilateral summit between the two countries in 5 years. Mr Sunak says the new illegal migrant legislation introduced this week supports this new deal.
We're announcing a new detention centre in northern France, a new command centre bringing our enforcement teams together in one place for the first time, and an extra 500 new officers patrolling French beaches, all underpinned by more drones and other surveillance technologies that will help ramp up the interception rate. And the legislation the UK has introduced this week supports this, because it's designed to break the business model of the criminal gangs and remove the pull factors bringing them to the Channel coast.
Heavy snowfall left drivers stranded for hours this morning, with people now being asked to only travel if necessary. Storm Larissa hit the UK overnight, causing flights to be suspended and rail services delayed as fallen trees blocked some lines. The Met Office has yellow warnings for snow and ice in place for parts of the UK over this coming weekend. Now, German police have said they've made an arrest following a hostage situation in the city of Karlsruhe, where 2 people were being held. It follows the mass shooting at a Jehovah's Witness hall in Hamburg, where at least 8 people died, including a woman and her unborn baby. Police say the gunman, German national Philip F., acted alone. He later took his own life. His motives were unknown. They say the 35-year-old was a former member of the Jehovah's Witness community. He had no criminal record and possibly suffered from mental illness. And Prince Edward has been named as the new Duke of Edinburgh. The title has been granted by his brother, King Charles, on the Prince's 59th birthday. He'll hold that title for his lifetime. The Duke made his first official visit to the Scottish capital today. His wife, Sophie, becomes the Duchess of Edinburgh. TV, online and DAB Plus radio. This is GB News. Now it's back to Mark Dolan tonight.
My thanks to Tatiana Sanchez, who's back at 10. Welcome to Mark Dolan Tonight. In my big opinion, my first on-air reaction to Gary Lineker's remarks about the migrant crisis and his suspension from this week's Match of the Day. In my take at 10, Harry and Meghan endlessly attack the monarchy, but are all too happy to accept their privileged titles, including calling their daughter Princess. The hypocrisy of this couple knows no bounds. My Mark Meets guest is Shane Ward, who became a household name when he won the second series of X Factor and went on to have a Christmas #1, and he even did a stint in Coronation Street. He tells his delightful and inspiring story after 10. In the big question, is the government's migrant plan immoral? We'll hear from all sides on that one, including Margaret Thatcher's former advisor, Niall Gardner. We'll have Sunday's papers, that's of course Saturday, tomorrow. Today's Friday, you know, there's your clips of the week. We'll have Saturday papers at 10:30 sharp with full panel reaction. Also in the news agenda, Fleet Street legend Eve Pollard will be here to discuss what the Gary Lineker row could mean for the future of the BBC. And reacting to tonight's stories are my fantastic panel of the criminal barrister and former Tory MP Jerry Hayes, author and political commentator, broadcaster and TV presenter Emma Wolfe, and last but not least, journalist and broadcaster Sam Dowler. Fantastic panel tonight. I want to hear from you throughout the show. mark@gbnews.uk. This show has a golden rule. We don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it. And tonight is a Lineker on the Brink special. So for the next 2 hours, big debates, big guests, and always big opinions. You can guess the topic of this one. What do you think? Many would argue that Gary Lineker has been consistent in his humanitarian views, but he has caused wild controversy with his comments in relation to the migrant crisis. Now, this is a fascinating debate. Mark, can you please fire up the monologue, because we've got work to do. I feel very strongly about this story because Gary Lineker is a paid member of the BBC. He's one of the faces of that organisation. £1.3 million a year, and yet, he has to have his opinions about politics and everything else. What we're going to do, we've got a little technical issue, but I want to just get reaction first from my panel to this story. Briefly, if you can, folks. Emma Wolfe, should Gary Lineker leave Match of the Day?
Well, I would have thought that for 1.4 million pounds a year, £1 million a year,
if only
he could keep his trap shut, frankly, Mark. But perhaps he feels that, you know, we deserve to hear from him. We've heard his views on the environment. We've heard his views on Brexit endlessly. We've heard his views on Shamima Begum. I don't exactly wait with bated breath, frankly, for my kind of political news from Gary Lineker. And I see the footage of him preciously having someone carrying an umbrella over him in the snow this morning, so that was nice. It does feel like it's one rule for him and one rule for everybody else at the BBC, actually, in terms of impartiality and neutrality and all of that. And it's very easy to preach, isn't it, when you are a multimillionaire? I don't know. I'm not really that interested in what Gary Lineker has to say. And I very much feel that this weekend is going to be a kind of temporary, he'll be off for 1 week or a couple of weeks so that the BBC can prove to us how neutral and impartial they are.
OK, well, that's an interesting and balanced view. We will get to my big opinion very shortly. But what do you think about this as a lawyer, no less, Jerry Hayes? Do you think that he's within his rights to express his free speech?
He's within his rights, but not on the BBC, which is meant to be impartial. I look at Gary Lineker from time to time to hear his views on football. I don't care what his views on politics are, but he's meant to be impartial. I think not that he should be suspended. I genuinely think, and I'm not exactly, an old lefty or mad right-winger, I just think he should go. But he won't go, will he? Because he earns an awful lot of money. A lot of people like what he says on football. Keep it to football. Otherwise, shut up.
OK, Sam Dowler, what do you think? A lot of people are defending him based upon the free speech argument.
Look, I would defend him because I don't particularly like the way he expressed it, but I do agree with the sentiment of what he said. I think that obviously he's part of the BBC, so therefore he shouldn't really say that. But I think a lot of people will respect him for sticking by his guns, standing by his morals. I mean, at the end of the day, if his contract was terminated by the BBC, he would find it incredibly easy to go to ITV or to Sky and make a lot more money than he's on now. And I think that, the fact that he feels so politically motivated, let's not forget that he hosted 2 refugees in his own home as well. So this is something that is very, he's very passionate about. And the chairman of the BBC donated £400,000 to the Tory party as well. So, I mean,
what's that got to do with anything?
Well, no, what I'm saying is that, if he had said congratulations to her on a fantastic new policy, we wouldn't be in this situation. The fact that he has argued against it and used such, colourful
Why doesn't he keep his trap shut?
I agree.
I don't care what he thinks about
language, Sam.
I agree.
He used the Nazi word.
Well, I know.
He used the Nazi word,
no, he didn't.
which none of us
No, he didn't.
ever...
He didn't. He conjured up 1930s Germany. He did not say Nazi.
He was conjuring up 1930s.
Yes.
That is just wrong, immoral, and stupid.
And it's the end of the line when it comes to his argument. I see where his argument is coming from. A lot of us can see where it's coming from, but obviously, using that language is
wrong.
It's incredibly incendiary. And
okay.
But I just
I just think, you know, maybe he's come to the end of his tether when it comes to...
He's come to the end of his contract.
When it comes to speaking out about things that he feels extremely passionate about.
Just to correct you guys, he's a freelance presenter. That's what his people claim. He's freelance. He's
no, he's got a contract.
He's not actually employed. He's not
got
actually...
a contract, so he's employed.
No, Emma's right. He's technically freelance.
No, but he's got a contract.
No, I have a contract at the BBC. It doesn't mean I'm employed there. It's a contract.
Well, but you have to be impartial.
And because it's a government agency, it's like, I mean, some of the
it's not a government agency.
GB News presenters go out and say things
it's
on Twitter
not a government agency,
that are dreadful. But, fine,
well, it's funded by the taxpayer.
It's funded by the taxpayer is what I mean, not a government agency.
Yes.
OK, well, look,
Gary
Lineker has not just split the country, he has split my panel. What's your view, Mark, at gbnews.uk? They will be back at 10:30 to debate it in the papers, but it's time now for my big opinion. Multi-billionaire socialist Gary Lineker has made a couple of headlines this week, with his supporters disingenuously defending his right to free speech and calling out the hypocrisy among those critical of cancel culture, saying they're trying to cancel him. Well, let me correct them on that as a point of order. Lineker has cancelled himself, as confirmed by the news earlier today that he is to temporarily step down as the presenter of Match of the Day. No public servant whose income is derived from an obligatory tax, in this case the licence fee, has the luxury of free speech. Given the fact that this regressive public tax will see old ladies potentially jailed if they don't pay it, those working for the organisation, particularly high-profile on-air figures, must be neutral. Lineker's people may point out that he's not a member of staff at the Beeb, but he's a freelance presenter. Well, I think that's a spurious defence. As the best-paid presenter on the Beeb, he is very much its face. Following one political statement after another, it has been one rule for Gary and another rule for everyone else at the Beeb, who would already have been sacked by now. In their inveterate weakness, simply by being unable to enforce and uphold the impartiality of their presenters, the BBC have no idea the amount of damage that's being done to their reputation, particularly if presenters take sides on an issue which is as divisive as this one. By linking this new migration policy to Germany in the Second World War, Lineker is effectively calling anyone who supports the small boats legislation, that's over half the country, by the way, as racist and cruel. Is it entirely wise for the Beeb, via one of their biggest stars, to demonise millions of people who pay the licence fee? Now, the migrant crisis is a complex one, and numbers across Western Europe of people fleeing persecution as well as economic migrants is enormous. There is no silver bullet, but it's hardly controversial to want to end a criminal business model of human trafficking. And it's hardly controversial to want to stop these perilous crossings which are leading to injury and death. Whatever your politics, the migrant crossings, 45,000 last year, are a humanitarian, economic and national security disaster. We have always and always will welcomed refugees, but there must be due process, there must be a procedure. There must be a safe and coherent way to do it, and one that doesn't involve the dispatching of human beings, often at the behest of international gangsters, into unseaworthy dinghies, with some of those crossing, lobbing their phones and paperwork into the water and running for the hills on arrival, or being picked up on arrival into a criminal infrastructure and the black economy. Stopping the boats is contentious, but it's not controversial. And of course, we must debate it on channels like this, where it's my job to have an opinion, not on Match of the Bloody Day. Lineker is clearly a huge talent as a Spurs, Leicester and England hero, and as a very fine sports broadcaster. But his hypocrisy knows no bounds when he wails about our unequal world whilst battling HMRC to reduce the size of his tax bill, or when he enters the debate on racial prejudice by bizarrely claiming his own experience of racism, notwithstanding that he's one of the most famous white men in the country. He wails about the environment, but I can't imagine those air-conditioned stadia in the desert at last year's World Cup were particularly brilliant for the environment. But Gary was happy to fly there to present the World Cup. The most woke presenter on TV was also very quiet on the modern-day slavery conditions in which those stadia were built, in 40-degree heat, with thousands falling to their death or simply dying of dehydration or heat exhaustion as they constructed the buildings from which he happily broadcasted. And what about the shocking homophobia and sexism of the Qatari regime? A truly regressive country in which women are second-class citizens and men face imprisonment or even death for being gay. None of that motivated Lineker to sit the tournament out. And when it comes to the migrant crisis, Lineker may have support from the privileged media elite, who are all comfortably insulated from the real-world impact on communities of the migrant crisis. But he's showing himself and the association of the BBC to be out of touch with the British people. This is a problem, as the British people pay for the BBC. Let me quote top professor of politics and expert on the Red Wall, Matthew Goodwin. Goodwin has said everyday Conservative ministers are on the news saying stop the boats is a win for the Conservative Party. Our national conversation does not reflect the public mood. There you go. What a balls up. I'm sorry, but Gary's got to go. What's your reaction? Mark at gbnews.uk. Coming up in the news agenda, Fleet Street legend Eve Pollard. She'll be talking about the Gary Lineker controversy. What could the implications be for the BBC? My Mark Meets guest is X Factor and Coronation Street star Shane Ward. But next in the big question, is the government's migrant plan immoral? We'll discuss that with Margaret Thatcher's former personal advisor and a top lawyer. See you in 3.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions are, those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one.
Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like
Absolutely.
on Dubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nah, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Mark at gbnews.uk, a big reaction to my big opinion. Let's see what you are saying. And I'm afraid you're not having Gary Lineker. Camille says, Mark, he should have been sacked by the Beeb a long time ago. Such an arrogant twit. And there are many other footballers who could take his place, and also the likes of Shearer and Wright. They are not replaceable. Gary should stick to crisps. And how about this from Shearer, who says, not Alan, I don't think, if Clarkson had to go, then similarly, now Lineker as well. I'll get to more of your emails shortly, but it's time for this. It's time now for the big question, in which we tackle a major news story of the day. And tonight, a top lawyer has said that the government's Stop the Boats legislation would be a clear breach of the Refugee Convention, with other legal experts condemning the policy as racist, illegal and unworkable. So is the legislation legally flawed, and is it immoral or even racist? To debate this, I'm delighted to welcome Niall Gardner, the director of the Margaret Thatcher Centre for Freedom and a former advisor to Mrs Thatcher, and Ivan Sampson, an immigration lawyer at Privatus Law. Can I start with you, please, Niall Gardner? Do you think that this legislation is unworkable and racist?
Mark, thanks very much for having me on the show today. And in my view, I think this legislation is a very big step in the right direction. And I think that it sets out a clear agenda for ending the small boats migrant crisis. And at the end of the day, the British government has to defend the sovereignty of the United Kingdom. It has to defend the safety and security of the people of the United Kingdom. And I think this legislation certainly is a very big step forward in the right direction. Now, having said that, I do believe that we are going to see major issues, of course, with the ECHR, and Britain ultimately will have to leave the European Convention on Human Rights. But as for all of these accusations of racism, these comparisons of Britain with Nazi Germany that we're seeing from the likes of Gary Lineker, this is absolutely outrageous. This is not a racist agenda. This is about defending the borders of the United Kingdom. These policies also will save lives. After all, these human traffickers are putting the lives of these migrants at risk crossing the channel. And also, they're coming over from France. The last I checked, France is not a third world country. If they want to seek asylum, they can claim it there in France. Large numbers of those crossing the channel as well are economic migrants, including tens of thousands of Albanians who have attempted to cross over. And so this idea that this is some sort of cruel policy put forward by the British government is absolutely ludicrous and fundamentally ridiculous.
Ivan Sampson, you are an immigration lawyer at Privatus Law. What do you think of this legislation? Surely nobody should be coming to the UK from France.
Well, it's an immoral law simply because it's unlawful. It breaches Article 13 of the Convention, it breaches Article 2 and Article 5. I bet your other guest has never read the European Convention, and neither has he read the Refugee Convention either. Yeah. Then he would know that it breaches all three articles. And the government's use of Section 19B of the Human Rights Act is a clear abuse of power. The Section 19B was never intended to be used in these situations. It was powers given to the Secretary of State to use in emergency situations. Look, the numbers haven't gone up at all. All that's happened is they're visible on the boats and not in the lorries. If you look at the numbers over the many years that people have been coming across illegally, the problem is the government doesn't have secure borders because it doesn't have systems to protect the borders of this country. And so what they're trying to do is demonise refugees coming here. This legislation will not get off the ground simply because it's unlawful. It breaches the European Convention and the Human Rights Act, and therefore it will be challenged in the courts.
However, what if Britain disposes of its membership of the Convention on Human Rights, Mr. Sampson?
That won't stop people coming across the channel. There's only one thing that's going to stop the people coming across the channel, is if we send them back to France. We need a bilateral agreement similar to the Dublin Convention. What we need to do is, if you come across the channel, you will be sent back to France. That is where their asylum application should be considered. And if they're granted in France, and if they have family members in the UK, they should be allowed to come and join them here. If they haven't, then they should be dispersed equally amongst the European countries. You know, of every 10,000 people in our country, we take 7 asylum applications. In Europe, they take 14. We take a fraction of what our neighbours in Europe take. It's simply not true. We've been overrun by refugees. It's simply a headline-grabbing, politically motivated policy by the government. Fact is, we don't take enough refugees. We should be taking 100,000 a year. That's our fair share of the global problem.
Ivan Sampson, many of my viewers and listeners would reject what you've said. They would argue that you're gaslighting them. 45,000 people entering the country illegally last year. Many of my viewers and listeners find images of people landing on dinghies, which is very dangerous, on our shores, sometimes chucking documentation and their mobile phone in the water as they cross, sometimes running for the hills when they get here. This is unacceptable to the British people.
It is, and the government's charged with preventing that and removing them. That is the problem. Look, we can't control people coming across the channel. The borders are too wide. What we can do is have systems in place to deter them. Now, as I said to you, if I knew that if I came across the channel, I'm getting sent back to France, I wouldn't bother making the trip. We need bilateral agreements with the French that work. I mean, this bromance between Sunak and Macron and throwing £500 million at him is not going to work. The French are not motivated to stop people crossing the channel. Now, if they have to decide the claims in France, if that's where they have to be decided, and they know full well that they're coming back to France, they will stop them setting off in the first place. Those are the agreements we need. The agreements that we have with them is basically throwing money down the pan.
I won't hold my breath. Niall Gardner.
Yeah, so I think, firstly, this idea that, Macron is going to strike a deal to take back all of these illegal migrants is just pure fantasy. And the French have said categorically they're not going to do that. I do believe that it's fundamentally wrong to be sending large sums of money over to France. This should be France's problem. They should be dealing with it. But the reality is Emmanuel Macron hates Brexit. He will do his best to undermine Brexit Britain. He has no intention whatsoever of striking a deal to have these illegal migrants return. And this idea as well that these are, largely refugees, that's not true at all. The vast majority are economic migrants, actually, here. So I think we have to make that fundamental distinction. And this idea as well of that Britain should take 100,000 refugees a year, I mean, I think it's absolutely preposterous, frankly. And when you look at the attacks coming from the UN Refugee Agency, look who's on the executive committee, actually, of the UN Agency for Refugees. Includes China, Russia, Iran, Venezuela, Zimbabwe, some of the world's worst human rights violators, now lecturing the British people and the British government over immigration policy. Is absolutely and utterly ridiculous.
Ivan Sampson, what would you say to my viewers and listeners whose communities have been impacted by migrant hotels?
I say that you should complain to your local MP for not deciding up asylum applications within a reasonable time. Look, in 2002, we had 84,000 asylum applications a year. When I first started as a young lawyer, we were having something like 100,000 asylum applications.
We've just lost the line there to Mr. Sampson, but thank you, top immigration lawyer.
That's the reality of
he's
work.
back. There you go. Having one of those nights. Mr. Sampson, thank you for joining us, immigration lawyer at Privatus Law. And my thanks to Niall Gardner, the director of the Margaret Thatcher Centre for Freedom and a former advisor to Mrs. T. Thank you, gentlemen. A fascinating debate. Your reaction, mark at gbnews.uk. My Mark Meets guest is X Factor and Coronation Street star Shane Ward. We'll talk fame, life, money, romance, and having a great career in showbiz. We've also got the papers at 10:30 with full panel reaction. But next in the news agenda, Fleet Street legend Eve Pollard on the big story of the day. And just what could the damage of the Gary Lineker story be on the BBC itself? We'll debate that next.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything, I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference. And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Welcome back to the show. In my take at 10, Harry and Meghan can't stand the royal family, but are happy to enjoy the titles. Duke and Duchess of Sussex, and their youngest daughter is now a princess. You couldn't make it up. That's my take at 10. But if you're joining us, let me bring you up to speed on a developing story. The football presenter Gary Lineker will step back from presenting Match of the Day this weekend after the BBC decided his tweet, which criticised the government's migrant policies, breached their guidelines on impartiality. The programme will be presenter-less tomorrow. Oh, goodness, it goes from bad to worse. A BBC spokesman has said, some of our pundits have said that they don't wish to appear on the programme whilst we seek to resolve the situation with Gary. We understand their position, and we've decided that the programme will focus on match action without studio presentation or punditry. Well, the BBC are in a mess, and who better to analyse the fallout than Fleet Street legend, pioneering newspaper editor Eve Pollard. Hi, Eve.
Hi.
Great to have you back. I think you're back from Florida, so it's good to see you back in Blighty. What a right royal mess. And in terms of Gary, it's all me, isn't it?
Well, the thing is, all I can say is welcome to the most toxic election you've ever heard of. I'm told, having just come back from being away for a couple of weeks, the world is on manoeuvres. Well, not the world, the Labour Party is on manoeuvres. There's drinks, there's lunch, there's dinner, there's plotting, there's everything. Virtually, apparently, anybody who's ever been a Labour MP is now in it right up to their necks. There's polling, there's plotting, there's all of that, which I don't blame them for because they've been out of office for a long time. You get together with your friends. It's like seeing old pals. It's like the old days, and they're desperate about winning this time. Now, Maybe the Tories are too. I haven't heard about what they're doing. I suppose they're trying to run the country. We'll talk about that in a minute. And I haven't heard anything about, the Green Party, small group, and the Lib Dems. But it is fascinating. We are now still possibly 18 months, maybe more, away from an election, and it's really started in earnest.
Well, indeed. And I wonder whether Gary Lineker's position on the migrant legislation being drawn up by the government plays into the government's hands, because we're all talking about this one policy, which really could move the dial next year for Rishi Sunak.
Well, I think a successful immigration policy will move the dial. Now, whether this is possible, whether this is feasible, I think that Gary was going too far. Of course I would think that, to compare it to the Nazis. You cannot compare anything we're doing in this country to the Nazis, who killed Jews, communists, gays, all sorts of people in the most murderous, most horrible way. So, of course he went too far. And it's interesting to see the people who are supporting him.
It's the media elite, isn't it?
The media elite. But also, the whole thing about the social media is, it's dangerous, it's dirty. You can say anything you like. In the old days, of course I would refer to this, newspapers had to be checked by a lawyer. Otherwise you got sued. You can say anything on social media. And of course, as you know, really clever people have undone themselves and left it. But of course, you can say what you like. Gary Lineker is a brilliant sports commentator, we have to admit that. And he's just gone too far. He went too far. He gave the BBC no option when he said he was sure he would still be in place on Saturday. And when he said he was chatting to the Director General often. You've got to be careful. The BBC, we're all paying for it. You, me, everybody who watches television is paying for it.
Yes, and tomorrow night, no presenter at all. What a farce. Well, wouldn't it be ironic if the ratings were even higher than usual?
Well, it would be. But, of course, sport is so important. Having edited 2 Sunday newspapers, sport is essential. If you don't have the sport report for their team, you don't sell. And when you consider the viewing figures, so, for example, the BBC 10 o'clock news, these are the latest figures I could find publicly, gets watched by 4.2 million at its best. Match of the Day gets at least 7 million. So it's talking to young kids. I'm part of a football family. I'm afraid they're all Arsenal fans, which has probably made half the audience hate me already. Wife, mother, grandmother of kids who are fascinated by the game. And he is in a very prominent position. But it's sad, it's tragic if he loses this, but it's also dangerous to say the things he said.
And how can this organisation allow one man to cause such trouble for them?
Well, I think the BBC have a lot of problems. You had newscasters and news people who left because they couldn't comment on news.
Emily Maitlis,
John Sopel.
Andrew Marr.
Absolutely, brilliant people. But the BBC's got to stick to it, and they've got to hold on to it. And throwing up the chairman, who really does not get involved in day-to-day programmes, is a sort of red herring, I think, really. Yeah. And he was a Tory donor. Well, you can have been all sorts of things. Yeah. Many people have changed parties. I don't know who's sports, but it's just a red herring thrown in, and they'll try and make him somebody to go for. And he's still under some sort of situation where they're going to decide. But he was a friend of Boris's.
No, that's right. His position is being reviewed, and I'm not sure he's got much of a case to answer. As you say, whoever is chairman of the BBC, it's historically often been quite politicised.
It's always a political appointment.
Yeah.
It always has been.
Yeah.
So it's fair enough that the Tories have somebody that they know, and Rishi Sunak apparently knows him very well.
Yeah.
So I think it's sad if they go pundit-less tomorrow, because I was hoping we'd have perhaps 3 more pundits. There are other footballers who could do this. Yeah. And maybe, possibly, a woman.
Well, wouldn't that be
Well, there's Gabby Logan, there's Alex Scott. They do a brilliant job.
Yeah, for sure. And what about the BBC itself? Do you think they're suffering major reputational damage in the context of this story? Because many of my viewers and listeners have been irritated by the BBC in terms of their one-note coverage during the pandemic, and, of course, their coverage of Brexit, which many consider to have been against Brexit.
Well, I think there is a different view. You look at Gary Lineker's house, it's lovely, it's in a very nice area. It's got lots of space. I think there are a lot of people who feel we're squashed as an island. We can only take so many people. May I say we must always take people who are running away from persecution. We must always keep this great British tradition we have of saving people who are possibly going to be killed where they live. But this is not like that. We know that many, I mean, they all seem to be men in the main coming across on these boats. Many of them are from countries which are having no war, no problem, just a sort of rather dull economy, maybe.
In the summer, a third of those crossing were Albanians.
Yeah. So that can't be right. But I also think that as a country, we're turning our back on something very simple. You may ask, why do the French not have this problem? The French have ID cards. And I'm afraid in the world that we live in now, we should have an ID card, which tells people who's here properly and who's here illegally. And that would probably sort the whole problem out.
Of course, they've got their migrant camps in Calais, haven't they? And they've got the jungle.
But the migrant camps are only in Calais because those people don't want to stay in France. They want to come here. They would, if a lot of people come to France from countries that the French used to run, like Algeria, Morocco, they get the ID card, which is called, I've forgotten now, but it's an accreditation card that says you're in the country, you're legal, you can get money from the taxes, you know, if you need it, go to the doctors, you can use all the services of that country, and most of all, you can work. And with that carte de séjour, that's what it's called, a carte de séjour.
You've had some of the biggest jobs in the media. Let's imagine for one moment that you're the Director General of the BBC. We can only dream. Gary Lineker, do you back him or sack him?
I think unless Gary Lineker says he will stop, and I mean stop, using social media to push his case. And I'm not saying his case is wrong. I'm only worried about this situation because I think it's going to take months and we need to sort this out quite fast. And actually, Tony Blair and William Hague did produce this idea. I mean, we all walk around with credit cards. We all walk around with something that distinguishes us. I was always against the idea of identity cards, but I think that would help. I mean, I think that would sort out who should be here and who shouldn't.
Well, look, so you always should be here because we love having you on the programme. Eve Pollard, welcome back from the United States and look forward to having you on the panel very soon.
Thank you.
Former editor of the Sunday Mirror, Fleet Street legend, the one and only Eve Pollard. Well, we've asked you on Twitter, are Gary Lineker's BBC colleagues wrong or right to stand in solidarity with them? Well, 57% say they're wrong, 43% give them their backing. Well, look, lots more stories to get through. And let me tell you that in my take at 10, it's all about Harry and Meghan. And my Mark Meets guest is Coronation Street star and X Factor winner Shane Ward. Lots to get through. See you in 3.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing. We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
Welcome back to Mark Dolan tonight and our news agenda. Now, we're going to discuss a very interesting debate. Let's talk about this a little bit because, look, we need to get... Can I just raise this issue of empty supermarket shelves, Jerry Hayes? The issue we have is that they are empty because we're so reliant on supermarkets as an infrastructure with which to feed us. When I was growing up, you had the greengrocer for your vegetables and your fruit, you had the butcher and you had the fishmonger. All of that's gone out the window and now we're going hungry.
Well, I don't blame it on Brexit. Now, I blame most things on Brexit, but I don't blame this. Henry Dimbleby has come out with some interesting stuff.
The founder of Leon, the fast food chain, the healthy fast food chain.
Yeah, which actually is quite a good place to have something to eat in the morning. And he's basically saying, look, what happens is the supermarkets really push down the prices of retailers and the people who produce the lettuce and tomatoes and all those sorts of things. Whereas the supermarkets say, well, yeah, we do, because we've got a cost of living crisis and we want things to be cheap in the shops. Simple, straightforward as that. In Europe, they have different rules, and it's far more authoritarian. So I think cheap food, we get the odd shelf, fair enough. But cheap food is a good thing at the moment.
Emma, do you think we should go back to the greengrocer, the butcher and the fishmonger?
I think it's exhausting for a lot of people to go and do the weekly shop with, you know, children, young families, busy lives, whatever. So the idea of this lovely, idyllic kind of do I mean bucolic? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sort of pottering, getting a little side of, I don't know, fillet from a fishmonger. I don't know,
a fishmonger.
Getting some rosy red apples and some broccoli from the thingy and then going to the next one. It's just not feasible. But frankly, can I just take issue with you guys, you middle-class millionaires, talking about cheap food in supermarkets when a lot of people are seeing prices going up and up and up and up.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure about this cheap food in supermarkets thing. When inflation is going through the roof, food prices are one of the big pressures and increases on people's bills at the moment. So
it's a huge problem.
On their household bills.
Sam, is the sort of supermarket system working for us?
Well, I mean, there is no other system, is there? I mean, like, you know, the supermarkets have destroyed the high street. You know, there's no butchers, there's no... like you said, there's no greengrocers, etc. And also, I agree with you, like the cost of living crisis. Like yesterday, I bought a can of beans from Sainsbury's, their own cheap brand, which was like 23p, and it tastes exactly the same as Heinz, which is 5 times the price. So, you know, I agree with you about talking about, you know, cheap food, etc. Like, it's a cost of living crisis and people are relying on that cheap food. You know, we've got food banks opening left, right and centre and people are using these food banks. So really, I don't think we're in the position to be saying like, oh, they're destroyed, supermarkets are destroyed. They are there, supermarkets are there and they will fight tooth and nail to remain there. Like, I don't know whether it's still relevant now, but like £1 in every £7 spent in the UK was spent in Tesco's up until recently. So I mean,
what's wrong with cheap food, Sam?
Yeah,
I don't
but
get
there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. So I think that we would love this idyllic thing where people would go down with their paper bag and say, oh, I'll have half a pound of sausages for 2 and 6. That was a long time ago, and those days are over.
Yep.
OK, well, look, moving on, and today marks 100 years since the drinking age was raised to 18 years old. The Intoxicating Liquor Act was introduced in 1923 to encourage self-control and powers of resistance. It was the first successful private member's bill brought forward by a female MP. But is this high enough? Should the age of drinking be raised to 21?
No, of course not. It's ridiculous. I used to be a member of the outrageous Colony Rooms Club, which you might just remember. You weren't, you're too young, you certainly weren't born. But the fact is, dreadful things, but wonderful things used to happen there because the licensing laws in the early 1980s, you couldn't get a drink after 2:30. So old soaks like me used to go with Francis Bacon and all these other people into the Colony Room. Well, I mean, to the Colony Rooms Club, and that's where you could get a drink. Now it has changed. Young people are still going to drink. In fact, you don't drink at all, do you?
No, but that's a bit different because
you're a young person.
I was chatting to a friend of mine about this yesterday. Her 16-year-olds don't drink, and I don't think young people drink properly.
No.
And I shouldn't say this, but
properly.
but it was a rite of passage, and the reason I don't drink now is to do with just having a young child and blah blah blah, and not being able to because hangovers get so bad when you're older. But I actually think, I spent sort of from about 14 to 24 just drunk or in pubs or in clubs. 14. People now, honestly, 16, 17-year-olds, they don't drink properly. They don't misbehave.
Yeah. But it's really bad for you. Drinking is bad for your development. Isn't the message to wait till you're 21 a good one?
21?
No, that's ridiculous.
I have to say, when I got to university, all the people who'd never really drunk or gone to pubs or lived away from home got there and got blind drunk every night and very, very sick and were all out of control because they hadn't had this culture. Also, we were given a little bit of wine with dinner with my parents from a very young age.
But also 21 is the same as in America.
What's in your mug?
We could.
What's in your mug?
Water is in my mug.
Looks like vodka to me.
Yeah, sure, babes. No, so basically, my point is, in America it's 21, and in 21 you can drive, you can own a gun, you can get married before you can have a drink, which is absolutely.
But you go to a frat party in America and they are out of control drunk.
In America, often one of their rites of passage, like you say, is 21 shots to do because you're 21.
Dangerous levels of
intoxication. People die from it as well.
Yes.
So,
that's a shock.
So,
be like. Or they lie down and do that thing where they just chug the beer down.
Be like the French I say, and ease your children into it.
People like me are on a gradual marathon. We'll have a lovely afternoon. The young people will just go shot, 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 shot. They go to the supermarket, get all the stuff, and get horribly, horribly drunk.
With the cheap food in the supermarket.
Cheap drinks and cheap booze as well. But it's all different. Most of my parliamentary career was a bit of a blur because the bars. There's so many bars.
Just think of the legislation you put through under the influence. It's all your fault, isn't it?
It's all my fault.
Everything from 1983 to 1997 is blamed on Jerry.
You could have been at Boris's lockdown parties if you played your cards right.
He probably was.
We never had parties that wild.
Sadly not. Speaking of that, Lanzarote's president has announced plans to shift the island's tourism model from dependence on British visitors. Brits have apparently been dubbed low quality because they do not spend as much as big-spending Germans, French and Dutch tourists. So are Brits abroad an embarrassment? Sam?
Well, having been a Brit abroad many times, I went to Ireland when I was like...
Went to where?
a bit of bit of Mallorca and all of that jazz. I think obviously, if you look at the likes of Magaluf and stuff, the Brits are the ones, leading the way with, getting your bits out and having a laugh, etc. But that is, we have
getting your bits out.
Britain is a booze culture, and that's just the way of it. And I don't think if you said it to the Irish, for example, you're hung, drawn, and quartered. So it's never going to happen. They're never going to change the age of drinking this country.
Oh, well hung, drawn.
No, this crowd won't have it. They're not happy. They want to keep drinking until they're blotto. We've got more to come. In my take at 10, I'll be dealing with Harry and Meghan, who can't stand the royal family but are happy to call their daughter Princess. That's next.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
Is the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
It's coming up to 10 o'clock and this is Mark Dolan tonight. In my take at 10 in just a moment, Harry and Meghan endlessly attack the monarchy, but are all too happy to accept their privileged titles, including calling their youngest daughter Princess. The couple know no bounds when it comes to hypocrisy. My Mark Meets guest is Shane Ward. He, of course, famous for winning the second series of The X Factor. He did a stint in Coronation Street. We'll talk about his career, fame, life and love. Shane Warne, what a character, what a guy, what a story. He's with me in just a few minutes. Plus, we've got tomorrow's papers at exactly 10:30 with full panel reaction. And it's all about Gary Lineker. That's right, tonight's show is a Lineker on the Brink special. I want to know your views. Should he stand down permanently as the host of Match of the Day? Do let me know. Mark at gbnews.uk. Lots to get through. My take at 10, Harry and Meghan, that's coming. But first, the headlines with GB News royalty, Tatiana Sanchez.
Mark, thank you very much and good evening. This is the latest from the GB Newsroom. Tomorrow's Match of the Day will focus on match action without studio presenters or pundits. That's according to a BBC spokesperson. It comes after several football commentators, including Alan Shearer and Ian Wright, have said on Twitter they won't feature on Saturday's show. That's after Gary Lineker was told by the broadcaster to step back from presenting Match of the Day until an agreement has been reached on his social media usage. That follows comments he made on Twitter criticising the government's new asylum policy. He likened the language used to that of 1930s Germany. Well, in a statement, the broadcaster said, "We've never said that Gary can't have a view on issues that matter to him, but he should keep well away from taking sides on party political issues or political controversies." Beck, too, the largest union in the BBC, has called it deeply concerning and is accusing the broadcaster of bowing to political pressure. Well, in other news, Rishi Sunak has agreed to give France almost £500 million over the next 3 years. That's in an attempt to end the Channel migrant crisis. The Prime Minister held talks with French President Emmanuel Macron in Paris today before announcing the landmark deal, which will see a new detention centre established in France. The joint news conference followed the first bilateral summit between the two countries in 5 years. Mr Sunak says the new illegal migration legislation introduced this week supports this new deal.
We're announcing a new detention centre in northern France, a new command centre bringing our enforcement teams together in one place for the first time, and an extra 500 new officers patrolling French beaches. All underpinned by more drones and other surveillance technologies that will help ramp up the interception rate. And the legislation the UK has introduced this week supports this, because it's designed to break the business model of the criminal gangs and remove the pull factors bringing them to the Channel coast.
German police have said they've made an arrest following a hostage situation in the city of Karlsruhe, where 2 people were being held. It follows the mass shooting at a Jehovah's Witness hall in Hamburg, where at least 8 people died, including a woman and her unborn baby. Police say the gunman, German national Philip F., acted alone and later took his own life. His motives are unknown. They say the 35-year-old was a former member of the Jehovah's Witness community. He had no criminal record and possibly suffered from mental illness. And heavy snowfall left drivers stranded for hours this morning, with people now being asked to only travel if necessary. Storm Larissa hit the UK overnight, causing flights to be suspended and rail services delayed as fallen trees blocked some lines. The Met Office has yellow warnings for snow and ice in place for large parts of the UK over this coming weekend. TV, online and DAB Plus radio. This is GB News. Now it's back to Mark Dolan tonight.
Welcome to Mark Dolan tonight. Thanks, Tatiana. We'll see you at 11. It's just gone 10 o'clock. My Mark Meets guest is Shane Ward, who became a household name when he won the second series of The X Factor and went on to have a Christmas #1 and even did a stint in Coronation Street. Shane Ward is coming up. Plus tomorrow's papers at exactly 10:30 sharp with full panel reaction. Lots to get through, but first, my take at 10. A title says a lot, doesn't it? A doctor is either a well-read, well-researched academic or somebody that can help you with a physical ailment. A sir, a dame or a lady is a venerated member of society whose contribution to one field or another, charity, the creative arts or industry, is worthy of note or reward. You'd think, therefore, that any British princess was, by definition, allied to the royal cause. How confusing, therefore, that the privacy-obsessed self-publicists Harry and Meghan should seek to burden their youngest child with the title of princess, a title so representative of an institution they clearly loathe and one representative of a country which they've clearly fallen out of love with. According to Boo-hoo Harry and according to his other half, Woko Mono, the royal family are emotionally unfeeling, dishonest and duplicitous and potentially racist. If they're so hostile to the family and the institution, why would they consign their youngest daughter to a lifetime of royal obligation? Well, I can think of a few million reasons why. This couple always say one thing and do another. They demand privacy whilst going on chat shows and releasing tell-all books. They demand action on climate change whilst jetting around the world. And they spend every waking hour attacking the royal family whilst cashing in on the prestige that being the Sussexes brings them. As for their youngest daughter, who, by the way, is a beautiful child, and we wish her every happiness in her life going forward, well, it's not her fault. I'm sure she's a terrific kid and will have a brilliant and constructive life. But by christening her princess, her parents are signing up to a British tradition that they claim to dislike so much and which I thought they were leaving. This poor child's birth certificate is littered with royal name drops. Princess Lilibet Diana. How they managed not to squeeze in Henry VIII, Queen Victoria or Elizabeth I is anyone's guess. It's obvious this couple want to have their cake and eat it, and they will never give up the royal gravy train. Calling their daughter princess is shallow, it's cheap, it's gold-digging and it's utter double standards. You're either a royal or you're not. You can't be half in, half out, as this couple seem to think they can. Right now, they're laughing at the institution, they're laughing at King Charles, and they're laughing at the country, whilst laughing all the way to the bank. What a pair of bankers. I think it's time for Charles to call the bluff of this couple. He's already dumped them out of Frogmore, which had me leaping for joy. And I think now he should dump them out of his family, tear up the invitation to the coronation and make it clear they are no longer royals, even if they call themselves as much. This couple, who have willingly departed the royal family and hate the monarchy so much, have no right to be calling their children prince and princess. It's a breach of the Trades Descriptions Act. They are no more prince and princess than I am the fifth Beatle. It's time the world's most entitled couple lost their royal titles. Now, what do you think? Constitutional experts would argue that Harry and Meghan's children automatically become prince and princess, so it is their birthright. The couple would argue they were hounded out of this country by an aggressive media and an uncaring royal household. They've raised a lot of money for charity and consistently used their platform to help others less fortunate than themselves. That's what they would argue. But what's your view? Mark at gbnews.uk. Anyway, here is someone that does deserve a royal title. Take a look at this. It is Prince Edward, the brand new Duke of Edinburgh. A humble guy, hard-working, doesn't cause any trouble for the royal family. He deserves that title. Reacting to my take at 10, we have a fantastic selection of geniuses: criminal barrister and former Conservative MP Jerry Hayes, author and political commentator Emma Wolfe, and journalist and broadcaster Sam Dowler. Sam, let me start with you. They're not royals as far as I'm concerned, and therefore they shouldn't have the titles and they shouldn't have an invitation to the coronation.
Wow. Well, they haven't been excommunicated. They are still royals, obviously. Harry is still second in line to the throne, and we can't deny that, no matter what he has done. Yes, I do think they should get an invitation to the coronation. I think they should come, and they will come. As for calling their daughter princess, I mean, Katie Price did that as well. Princess T.R.M.E. doesn't make her a princess. But I think that. It's such a complicated situation, and and obviously, Charles and William have tried to reach out, and they had the christening this week, and obviously the royals couldn't go. It was kind of one of those situations where I think you invite somebody knowing that they can't come. Is it a battle? Yes, of course it is. But I think especially Britain, me included, I want to see some sort of, I want to see them come together again. I think it's incredibly sad, and I feel for Harry, in certain aspects as well. But he's had a very charmed life, and I think he's been sucked into this whirlwind of making money, and his collateral is speaking about his family, and I think obviously Frogsit, it was a necessary evil, because it's a house lying empty, and I don't know, it's just so messy, and I just wish it wasn't happening, especially so soon after the Queen died. And I think they should come to the coronation, and I want to see some sort of forgiveness on both sides.
Emma Wolfe, they don't like the royal family, they don't like the monarchy, they don't like Britain, except that they've called their daughter princess. You couldn't make it up.
You couldn't make it up. It's absolutely ludicrous. It's absolutely ludicrous. They left, and yet they still want to be part of it. They still want... I mean, they will come to the coronation. Sam's absolutely right. I'm sure they'll come to the coronation, but I don't think they should have been invited. As for calling their daughter Princess Lilibet Diana, it's beyond parody, really. I mean, to call them kind of contradictory is a polite way of putting it, but basically they're wildly hypocritical. They are coining it in from their royal status. That's huge, and of course that's huge in America. They're going to talk endlessly. They need to find some other kind of revenue stream or income stream or whatever, because they are going to... This is going to wear thin very quickly, this sniping. I mean, the nastiness of Prince Harry's memoir, Spare. I think we have to, you know, call a halt to these proceedings and just stop giving them the airtime that they so desperately crave.
It's one thing with the Americans already. I mean, like, he was, for goodness sakes, he was diagnosed live on television.
It's just an embarrassment.
And it was like, and that's just so much overshare when obviously it's a family that loathe that sort of behaviour.
And he's the son of the King of England. That's the thing. He's not just anybody banging on about his miserable childhood.
I mean, Jerry Hayes, legally and constitutionally, these children become prince and princess. So are we being a bit hard on the Sussexes?
Do you know, Mark, I don't really care. I honestly don't really care. Harry's obviously a troubled child, obviously walking behind the coffin of his dead mother. It's a terrible thing. But really... why is he being so unpleasant to the king, who seemed, I know him reasonably, and he seems a very nice bloke, doing his best to hold the family together. But this obsession... Now, it's quite interesting what's actually happening in America. When South Park start taking the mick out of you, you're in real trouble. And let me just tell you a little exclusive thing. My daughter is a princess. She married a Russian aristocrat who's obviously never been to Russia in his life. Neither his dad, his grandfather went to Paris, left Moscow, gosh, I know, hundreds of years ago. She never uses the title because she doesn't care. And most people don't care either.
I thought you got it from you because you're the Queen.
Oh. Oh.
Let me know your thoughts, Mark, at gbnews.uk. Should the couple be at the coronation? Are they guilty of hypocrisy, or am I being too hard on them? Mark at gbnews.uk. Looking forward to my Mark Meets guest, who is next. It's Shane Ward, star of X Factor. He won it, of course, a few years ago, the second series. Then Coronation Street, hit records. He's a very successful guy, and he tells his story after this.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit off.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Dubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the people's channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Mark Dolan tonight. It's time now for this. Yes, it's time for Mark Meets, in which I speak to the biggest names in the world of politics, showbiz, sport and beyond. Tonight, a man who exploded onto the national stage as the winner of the second series of X Factor, Shane Ward. There followed a Christmas #1 with sales of 250,000 and a debut album which reached the top of the charts, ultimately going 4 times platinum in Ireland and Britain alone. After 2 more hit albums, Shane did a stint in Coronation Street as Aidan Connor. Well, the story continues, and I'm delighted to say that Shane Ward joins me now. Hi, Shane.
Absolute pleasure. Very nice to meet you, man.
Great to have you on the show. Congratulations on everything you've achieved so far. How old were you when you first got into music?
I'm from a big Irish family and one of 7. So professionally, I was 21 because of the X Factor when I was signed, but music's always been there. Irish music, country music. So probably from the age of 4 or 5.
Amazing. Did you have to get up and perform for the family at Christmas?
Well, there were so many of us. It was quite the battle. Basically, there would be massive sing-offs from different bedrooms, and one would have to give up and sing the song from the other bedroom. So, yeah, there was always a competition going on.
Listen, you're a very credible artist. Did you have any apprehension about signing up for X Factor, given the fact that it's a TV show?
Not at all. I think for me, I was 21 years old. I've just been signed to a massive record label, and I have the Christmas #1. So for me, it was like everything happened so fast as well. You haven't really got time to think. But 17 years later, because that's how long it's been, it's amazing to kind of reflect on everything that I've done since, and still know. I think for me, I think it's a great opportunity. It's a fantastic platform, and I think with social media now, you know yourself, it's huge. So you can actually, you don't have to go on these shows anymore. You can just use a different platform. But no, I stand by it. I think it's great.
How did you adapt to fame?
I have a very strong Irish mammy. she kind of keeps me on my toes.
I got one of those.
Literally, she's 5 foot nothing. But no, I think for me, I've always had a strong team around me in terms of family and friends. And yeah, just avoided the yes people and, stuck to, real people. And so far, so good.
Yeah, look, I'd never be so vulgar as to ask about money, but was it a good deal, after you sort of signed that record deal with Psycho and Simon Cowell? Was it profitable?
I think looking back in general, the initial, it's £1 million contract. You're like, wow, I'm 21, I get £1 million. You then, over time, get to learn the industry and realise that £1 million is for the whole campaign. Music videos, clothes, touring, taxis, basically
sandwiches,
paying everybody. Yeah, exactly, sandwiches, everything. And then basically, you kind of make your money on the tours. That's your bread and butter. So I think you instantly move past it because you can start making money whilst touring live. So.
Yeah, and listen, one of the hardest things is to keep that momentum going after winning a show like X Factor. You achieved that. So how do you keep it going? What was the secret of your success? Because it's all too easy to be a one-hit wonder, isn't it?
Yeah, I think in general, I always feel very, very blessed. But just like us all, we all work hard, and sometimes it can be luck. You know, sometimes it might be the right person that you've walked in front of. But also belief, more than anything, just know that you are good at what you do, and you know, something eventually good will happen for you. I mean, I always get asked, like, from so many people if I could give any advice, and finally 17 years later, my advice for anyone going for any type of show or any part of the industry, just know that whatever you walk in that room with, you leave with. So it doesn't matter what these people say, you've always got that talent, so just believe in it. So yeah, I mean, for me, I just love doing what I do. I love to sing, I love to act, and I've been given some amazing opportunities.
You were, of course, starred in Coronation Street, which is my favourite TV show, my favourite of the soaps, because it's very dramatic. There's lots of action, but there's great comedy as well. They're so well written, those scripts. How did the Coronation Street gig come about? Did you audition?
Again, social media is a wonderful place when it wants to be. And what happened was, it was my name got confused with another actor that was on the show at the time. And he was playing a bad boy character. So a lot of my fan base was congratulating me on social media, saying, congratulations on your new role as a bad boy in Coronation Street. And I'm like, I'm not in Corrie. So myself, I Googled it and I put Bad Boy Coronation Street, and I saw that his name was Sean Ward. And I've gone, oh, I get the confusion. And because it generated such a buzz, the team at Corrie contacted my management at the time and said, would Shane like to come in for an audition? And I was like, I'm there. So it's amazing how the stars aligned, and yeah.
That's just brilliant. And can I ask you, did you have to do, I mean, have you done acting classes? Are you a trained actor, or are you just a natural?
No, I'm not a trained. It was my first TV gig, and anything before that was I did a show in the West End called Rock of Ages, where I got to play a rock star called Stacey Jacks when it came from Broadway, and I got to sing song. My opening song was "Dead or Alive" by Bon Jovi, so I was delighted. But TV, that was my first gig, and I got to work with some amazing, Barbara Knox and William Roach, and just Sally Dinver, and just so many great people that I watched and I absorbed as much as I could, because I was there for 3 years, but it goes quick. But I had an amazing time.
What did you learn from the likes of Bill Roach, who plays Ken Barlow, Barbara Knox, Rita, of course? What did you learn from them?
To take my time. And I remember doing a scene in The Rovers, and I was playing across another character. And the camera was about to pan from our scene straight to William Roach to Ken Barlow. And we did our scene, and it was very fast. And then the cameras panned to William Roach, and everything stopped. It was quite like The Matrix. It's like you watch him, I'm like, that's how you do it. And in those moments, you think, do you know what? You've got to absorb it and just take your time, believe every word that you're saying. But they were very kind as well. I mean, he's the longest. I think he's been on the show the longest, hasn't he, William Roach, since the very beginning. And he was an absolute gentleman. So yeah, I learned a lot from him.
So listen, what's next? Because you are always busy. I think it's a tour. Tell me more.
Yeah, so I have my first headlining tour, my first tour in 11 years. Couldn't believe it. Because of doing everything else, I've been doing shows, but I've never done a headlining one in 11 years. So yeah, I have a new tour called Anthology, and I head out to Manchester on my first date on April 9th. And then go to Glasgow on the 12th, London on the 15th, and then Dublin in May the 6th. And more shows will be added. But yeah, I'm just very excited about getting back out there, and yeah, people can click on Ticketmaster, and yeah.
Well, I think it's going to be brilliant. So all the hits from all 3 albums.
Correct, yeah. So everything I did with Sony, we've compiled it into one place called Anthology. And yeah, I just get to celebrate with my fans that have grown up with me and have been so loyal and so patient, which I thank you for. And I'm just looking forward just to this kind of like nostalgic trip down memory lane with them. And then it brings on the new tour in obviously later on in the year for new material that they've been waiting for, because I took a trip to Nashville in March, and that was incredible. So I've written a load of stuff during the pandemic, a lot of country pop as well. So I think it's one of those things, like, you've got an opportunity, you have a window, just go for it. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Brilliant. So in the Anthology tour, all your hits and some new material as well. In that case, what my viewers and listeners must do is go to Ticketmaster and search Shane Warne Anthology. I believe a bit of acting is in the offing as well.
There is, yeah. Yes, you're totally right. People can click on Ticketmaster and type on my name, Shane Ward. But yeah, no, I have a brand new Channel 5 crime drama, which I'm a lead in, coming out. I think it's going to be September this year. Don't quote me on it, but it's called The Good Ship Murder. And what I'm allowed to say about it is it follows the life of Jack Grayling, an ex-detective who leaves the force and decides to pursue his first love, which is to be a singer. Hello. So it's kind of like felt like it was written for me. But if you like Agatha Christie whodunits with beautiful backdrops, the thrill of the chase of who did it, and then a performance at the end of every episode, which I do because I'm now the resident cruise ship singer. It's a lot of fun. So I'm looking forward to it.
Well, I, for one, will be watching, and we could all do with a bit of entertainment. So why don't you pop onto Ticketmaster and search Shane Ward? That's Shane with a Y. Shane, we'll catch up soon, and really good luck with the tour.
Take care. Appreciate it. Thank you, man.
What a star. What a professional as well. My goodness, a fine and articulate young man. Brilliant stuff. Look, lots more to get through, including tomorrow's papers next with full panel reaction. Don't go anywhere.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference. And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
It's exactly 10:30, so it's time for this. And we kick off with the Telegraph and the subject of my big opinion tonight, which you can now catch on GB News Twitter, at GB News, courtesy of our digital producer, Connor. Now, the BBC faces revolt over Lineker is the headline. Presenter's colleagues boycott Match of the Day after corporation orders him off air for Nazi tweet. The Beeb is facing a backlash after forcing Gary Lineker to step down from Match of the Day, prompting a boycott from other presenters of the show. The corporation took action after Lineker refused to apologise for posting an inflammatory tweet drawing parallels between the government policy on illegal migrants and the language of Nazi Germany. Hunt, we can learn from Swedish lockdown. Jeremy Hunt has said Britain has a lot to learn from Sweden's decision not to impose mandatory COVID measures. The Chancellor acknowledged that the Scandinavian country had achieved a similar outcome to Britain without having to resort to draconian rules. What a breakthrough. Militant doctors trying to shut hospitals. The BMA has been accused of trying to shut down hospitals during strikes next week by using militant tactics to prevent the NHS from preparing. 3-day walkouts by junior doctors expected to begin on Monday could mean up to 500,000 appointments and operations are cancelled as efforts are made to protect A&E and critical care services. What a scandal. The Times now. Mutiny of the day as Lineker gets star support. Fellow presenters pull out in solidarity after BBC orders ex-England captain off-air over tweets. Power hugs in Paris. Rishi Sunak with President Macron today at the first bilateral summit between Britain and France in 5 years. The Prime Minister called Macron mon ami and spoke of an entente renewed as he set out a package in which the UK will give France nearly £500 million to set up a migrant detention centre and a dedicated small boats police force. The Daily Mail, mutiny at BBC over Lineker red card. Bosses confirm his small boats Nazi tweet broke guidelines. He will step back from Match of the Day, but co-stars Ian Wright and Alan Shearer boycott show in solidarity. What a pack of numpties they are. The Daily Express, Rishi's £478 million deal. I said we would stop the boats. In an extraordinary deal struck with Britain's historic rival, Rishi Sunak has declared a big step forward in ending the Channel migrant crisis following a deal with Emmanuel Macron. Weekend, BBC stars walk out in solidarity after Lineker suspended. Daily Mirror, MOTD in turmoil. Revolt for Lineker. Stars boycott show in protest at BBC, axing Gary over migrant tweet. OK, and how about The Guardian next? Lineker suspended from BBC over social media row. And 1 in 10 teenagers say they are addicted to porn. And last but not least for now, the Daily Star. Gary Lineker dropped from Match of the Day after tweet row. Beeb's gone too far. Shearer, Wrighty and Scott go on strike in solidarity. The BBC is in crisis after Match of the Day pundits Alan Shearer, Ian Wright and Alex Scott went on strike in solidarity with Spud salesman Gary Lineker, who has been forced to step down from the show. And for now, those are your front pages. Let's get full panel reaction now. Criminal barrister and former Tory MP Jerry Hayes, author and political commentator Emma Wolfe, and journalist and broadcaster Sam Dowler. And look, there's only one story in town, Jerry Hayes, and that is Gary Lineker. BBC faces revolt over Lineker.
There's a whiff of nasty hypocrisy in the air. There are people who are saying, oh, yeah, we agree with Gary Lineker. Oh, he's so right. Isn't it wonderful you said it? Hello, this is the guy who commentated on matches in Qatar, who want to lock up gays, who say to women, you've got no rights. Really, where is his moral compass? It doesn't exist. He's got to go.
All right, and do you think that he will survive this drama? Because I don't think he will.
Well, I don't think he will. No, I think you have to go. Who cares about Ian Wright and all these other people? There are lots of other people, as Eve Pollard said to you earlier in the programme, particularly women, who can take over his job with great ease. I'm sorry, the hypocrisy stinks.
Oh, there you go, not sitting on the fence. Emma Wolfe, is it time to kick politics out of football once and for all?
I'm not answering that. I'm just amazed at how excessive this... I mean, this is every single paper. And look, you know, even the broadsheets, this is like serious papers. This is such a massive big deal. And isn't it weird how the froth is so much more than the substance? The fact of the small boats policy didn't get nearly this much coverage and is actually quite important. But Gary Lineker tweeting... It's like the lockdown files. the amount of outrage over Isabel Oakeshott's releasing of these hundreds of thousands of tweets got so much more coverage than the issue itself, which is that the government basically lied to us, coerced us, manipulated our behaviour.
Actually, no.
Exacerbated our fear.
Objection sustained.
Exacerbated our fear. Can I just finish?
Yeah.
That was the issue. And in fact, it was all about, ooh, well, Isabel shouldn't have done that. Isabel shouldn't
Missing
have
the point.
Yeah,
and killing
missing the
messenger.
point. This whole thing is totally excessive. Who cares?
But it has everything that the Brits love. It's showbiz, it's sport, it's the government. I mean, like, what more are we about?
But if you ask most of the people what they're fussed about, they won't know. They just know it's a Gary Lineker tweet.
Here's my problem with... Is he a walker? He might be. Nicely done. Thank you very much. There you go, little mic drop for you. The reason why I think that his tweets have been problematic, not just invoking the Second World War and Nazism, which I think is in poor taste and offensive to Jewish people, but the issue is that he is effectively calling half the population racist. Yes. Because this new policy, this law, it may or may not work, the Illegal Migration Act. However, it's supported by over 50% of the voting population, all of whom Gary Lineker is calling racist.
In what way is it supported by half the population?
A lot of the electorate really care about controlling
I get it.
the latest polling
in this country.
No, the latest polling says that just 16% of the population are completely against this policy. So it enjoys popular support. And Gary Lineker is saying to all those people, you are racists.
I don't think he is. I think he's expressing his personal views because, there's...
But he works for the BBC,
they're on the wrong side of the European Court of Human Rights, for example. As soon as we start...
How do you know that? There's been no decision.
And also what Suella said about invasion, what she said about 100 million people coming over.
Yeah, but whatever you think, that resonates.
There are tropes.
What Suella and Rishi Sunak are saying actually resonates with... I know this is unpalatable for you, but it resonates with a lot of people. Yes. And the thing is, Twitter is not normal people.
No, it is not normal people.
Gary Lineker is talking to a certain group of people on Twitter.
Yeah.
Most people are agreeing a lot more with what Rishi Sunak and Suella Braverman are trying, probably in a futile sense,
it's more distraction from the Tories.
Well, I wonder if it's the
Otherwise,
opposite.
why did Brexit happen?
Why don't they sort out the detention centres in the UK first before they start?
That's not the issue, Sam.
Next up, Suella's going to be like, oh, get people on the turrets and shoot them in the boats.
You're a former Tory MP. Are the Tories quids in? Because all we've talked about for the last 3 days is this policy of stopping the boats. Yeah. The optics are good for the Prime Minister in terms of those who support this policy, and it's now been in the news for days and days and days.
Yeah. I mean, Rishi Sunak, I think, is a decent man. He's honest. He's everything that Boris Johnson isn't. He's honest, he's decent. And, Boris Johnson, I'm afraid, is a crook.
His pants on.
Who cares? Boris Johnson is a crook. I've known him for 30 years. And he's totally and utterly dishonest. He's totally debased politics in this country. Liz Truss, was it Liz Truss? I can't remember. She was so quick. A complete and utter disaster. Crashed the economy with quasi-Kwarteng. Now you've got someone who looks at the detail. Look at Article 35, all the trans and all the rest of it. Yeah, he looked at it. Look what's happening in the Northern Ireland Protocol. He looks at the details. Look at this. He's having a crack at it. Whether it works or not, I don't know. Whether it's in breach of ECR, we do not know. But everyone forgets that we only have to take notes.
I think, and you're a lawyer, you'll appreciate this. I think calling Boris Johnson a crook is a bit harsh. However, we can talk about his...
thoroughly dishonest. There we are.
There you go. Well, you're entitled,
Guineas, please.
entitled to your opinion.
Thank you.
But politically, do you think the Lineker aspect, does it help the Tories because it keeps this story in the news?
It does. I mean, that's why it's on every front page, because it tickles the sort of interests of lots of people. One, BBC, a lot of Tories. I like the BBC. I think they're great, actually, and I do think they're impartial. But that haters the BBC, which just shows you how anti-Tory they are and all the rest of it. And then there's the other people who just sort of say, well, Gary Lineker, what does he know? He's a footballer. So it actually, that's why it's on every front page. It's interesting. And you got it right, I think. It actually helps Rishi Sunak in probably every wrong way. Because the majority of people who watch this channel, I know they're not necessarily mainstream, although a lot of people obviously love your show, and rightly so. However, it's gonna touch people in a way they're going to say, Rishi Sunak might just be right.
Yeah, I mean, the BBC don't want a star presenter that picks a fight with half of the population. That's my point, Emma Wolf.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we have to acknowledge, that the point about this as well is that the BBC is funded by the licence fee. That's what people are talking about, that he shouldn't be expressing opinions like this when they're supposed to be impartial and neutral. And he's not neutral and he's not impartial. And also, he's a sports presenter.
He talks about football.
But this is
Sam, are you running out of ways in which to defend Gary Lineker?
Well, this is the hill he's choosing to die on, basically, I think.
And he will die.
I think he'll survive. I think he'll be fine.
But if he doesn't survive in the BBC, he will do just as well elsewhere, if not better.
He will be
I think he's standing by his principles. As I said earlier, he's...
Principles? After supporting the Qatari government?
Do you like the Beeb?
I do.
Well, I think your mate Gary Lineker is damaging the Beeb this week. And I think he's giving critics of the Beeb a stick with which to beat it.
Yes.
He's put them in a very difficult position because they obviously want to keep him, but at the same time they can't be seen to not do anything. So they have to obviously retire him even if just briefly from Match of the Day. But then obviously you've got the other two, Shearer and is it
Right. And Alex Scott saying she won't do it. What amazes me is they're really struggling to find people to stand in. I'll do it tomorrow. I mean, I think it clashes with something else.
And you know anything about sport?
No, but I do actually. I've supported Liverpool all my life. But isn't it funny that they're struggling to find other people to jump in?
Well, I think what would be hilarious, there are going to be no presenters tomorrow. Wouldn't it be fantastic if it gets record ratings?
Are they going to have like a sort of empty chair?
But also it'll be difficult because whoever takes the chair will be like, oh, so you agree, so you.
I know, and they're all trying. It's all very complicated.
So it's become difficult for the BBC because obviously it's like you're a scab when you cross the.
You're a scab. You're a scab.
That might be difficult for them.
If I was a young sports presenter, I would say, I'll do it. No problem.
And they should do. They should.
And a woman. Let's have a woman.
Is it any surprise that Alistair Campbell, Tony Blair's former director of communications,
all over this,
and also Alan Shearer, Ian Wright, they're all behind Lineker because they are the media and political elite.
Because they agree with him, which is not the point.
But also they are insulated. They are insulated from the impact of an influx of migrants into the country and the migrant hotels.
This is what I was trying to say earlier, Mark. It's very easy to preach when you are a very, very... I mean, look
living
at him,
in St John's Wood.
Oh, he's living in St John's Wood. You got an umbrella because it's snowing a little bit and someone carries you out to your... Someone carries you out practically on a sedan chair out to your chauffeured limo. He's not living the real world. He's not living in Sheppey or in Jaywick or in...
Yes, you're right.
Harlow.
You're right.
Do you know what I mean? He's not feeling the impact of any of this.
What a gift for the enemies of the BBC. Yeah. For Nadine Dorris, that towering intellect that we all... Oh, does she present a show or is it something else?
The enemy.
Oh, the enemy. Well, I mean, no one will listen to it.
Can forget about her.
Oh, forget about her. Struck off.
But I mean... But the thing is, I think with the Tories, this is very much a deflection because they know they're out. And they're like, this is Rishi Sunak's last attempt to do something, meaningful, and if he stops debates, which he will not. But they're just obviously the country is falling apart.
It is.
I mean, every other aspect.
The country is falling apart.
Every other aspect. So immigrants, the boats are really quite low down on most people's.
You're from the Welwyn Garden City intelligentsia, the literati.
I'm glad you don't know where I live.
Well, there you go.
I didn't realise there was one.
There is.
If only. Look at lots more to come. More Lineker. We've also got waiting in the wings. More front pages, including tomorrow's Independent with a fascinating story. We'll also be asking, is there still a stigma about going topless in Britain? And do we have a problem disagreeing with each other in modern life? But we've got the Independent, other papers next. Don't go anywhere.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing. We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion, and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even some ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
Welcome back to the show. We've got the papers with my brilliant guests, criminal barrister and former Tory MP Jerry Hayes, author and political commentator Emma Wolfe, and journalist and broadcaster Sam Dowler. Let's take another front page hot off the press, and it's The Independent. And they lead with Gary Lineker red-carded, BBC star steps back from Match of the Day until new agreement reached on his social media. And Le Bromance, but where's Le Boeuf? Sunak and Macron are all smiles, handshakes and back rubs, but one really big question remains. What does Britain really get out of handing France £500 million to solve the small boats crisis? I wouldn't mind raising this topic with you if I could, Jerry Hayes, as a criminal barrister. I've spoken to a couple of lawyers who say that his legislation to stop the boats within the Commons will not be legally effective. It's not legally fit for purpose. What's your view? Can Rishi Sunak stop the boats?
The answer is we don't know. We really don't know. And again, I keep on repeating this because people don't seem to get it, that the European Court of Human Rights only says to Parliament, take account of. It's not like the Brussels
What, is it
thing.
advisory?
It's advisory.
All right, and can we ignore it?
Yes.
Because other EU member states ignore the ECHR all the time, don't they?
Of course they do. So, do you remember prisoners' rights to vote and all the rest of it? What happened? Absolutely nothing.
So you don't think that we have to exit the Convention on Human Rights?
Of course not. It would look terrible. Russia did it. All these other people did it. And it was, hang on, it was actually drafted by British lawyers. It was supported by Winston Churchill. And which bit went you like? You know, the right to have a fair trial, the
But
right...
is the issue the Human Rights Act of 1998 under Tony Blair, is that what's scuppered it for us in terms of our sovereignty
exactly
to
the same.
decide
It was
these
always...
things?
No.
The Human Rights Act has been, blamed
Human Rights
for our
Act is...
problems.
Yes, I know, because for people who should know better.
Well, getting rid of terrorists from the country, for example, known terrorists and expatriated.
No. The reason known terrorists... are sometimes stopped by lawyers, is because there's loopholes in the law. It's nothing to do with the EHCR. And people don't get it.
So what do you think? Can Rishi Sunak stop the boats?
I think he's got the best chance of anyone. I can't say that he will. Immigration has always been out of control in this country. I mean, the big thing that people were worried about, particularly in the red wall seats, were people coming to take their jobs or undercutting. A bit of a myth, but it's a big, big, big thing in people's minds. Small boats, that was quite interesting. You had that lawyer on.
Yeah.
Yeah, you had that lawyer on. And he told me something which I hadn't appreciated.
It hasn't.
That, in fact, the number of migrants coming in illegally is no different from the lorries. Except with lorries, you don't see it, do you?
Yeah.
You see it in boats.
Boats are more visible,
So that was something we all learned today. I didn't
but
know that.
Sunak is not stupid, is he?
No.
And he's politically astute as well. He wouldn't pick this fight if he couldn't win it.
And he
in terms of
wouldn't
stop the
give.
boats.
He wouldn't pledge £500 million.
It's a lot of money.
Yeah, and
if
political
it wasn't
capital.
going to be, and his political capital.
So the question is, what is he up to? What looks like success for Rishi Sunak in terms of stopping the boats, do you think?
Getting some kind of bilateral agreement with France. I think
shouting at the French.
No, but a bilateral agreement is off the table. It has to be with the EU. That's what Macron said today.
But that's what they all want, because they're taking more immigrants than we do.
Can I just finish?
Sorry,
yeah. I think he needs some kind of agreement with France and, by extension, with the EU to stop them there. I think that your lawyer earlier made that point, that they need to be stopped there, or they need to know. Sorry, I hate to say they as though they're just this unidentified mass of people. But migrants who are not coming here as refugees need to know that the minute they get here, they'll just have to go back. It's not a fun crossing, I would imagine.
Yeah.
No.
So if it is utterly pointless coming here and they're going to be stopped... But then again, he also made the point that it's a very, very long coastline and there are many sand dunes and there are many ways of coming across. So it's tackling the people traffickers.
I also wonder whether it's a numbers game, and if by the next election numbers are down to 20 or 30 a day, the public will take that.
This is the point. It's a political move, and it's his last move to make a difference. That's why these, obviously Gary Lineker thinks these are harsh. And like I've spoke to my mum about it earlier, and she's a Tory through and through, and she was like, it does look harsh on paper, and it does seem that way. And the thing is that this is the only thing he can do because he knows he's going to lose. It's just about...
He's got 5 key objectives. He's got lots...
It's just about how much he's going to lose by. And this is one of the things...
Sam...
Like you said, if he does actually end up reducing the numbers, then he might get a few extra votes.
People feel very strongly about this. They really do.
I understand
Even in landlocked parts of the country. And you must get that from all your viewers.
100% I do, and listeners, yeah.
Sam, if I turned up in America without the correct paperwork and hadn't done all my, what are they called? Easy blah, 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 all the things you're meant to do, I wouldn't be allowed in.
No.
Yeah, the I-visa, the E-visa, that's right.
Yeah, E-visa.
And also, does Gary Lineker...
We have rules. We have laws.
Does he and do those who are backing him live in a community impacted by an influx of migrants, possibly hundreds of people living, accommodated in a migrant hotel? What does that do to a small community, for example, in
St John's Wood?
Well, yeah, maybe
that's
perhaps where they should be accommodated. Now, the writer George Monbiot published an article on Russell Brand today in The Guardian that hasn't pulled any punches. Once nominated as his Hero of the Year, Monbiot now claims Brand wastes his talent and has crossed the line into the realm of conspiracy theories. It even goes as far as to state if politics takes a very dark turn in the next few years, it will be partly as a result of people like Russell Brand. So has Russell Brand lost the plot, or have we lost the ability to disagree with others? Sam?
I think he has lost the plot. I mean, you only need to cast your mind back a few years when he was in massive Hollywood movies, married to Katy Perry, and then now he's on his YouTube channel spouting out conspiracy theories, and I agree with you. I agree with the author of the Guardian piece. It's like some of it's it's quite embarrassing. Like you talked about chloroquine or whatever.
Hydroxychloroquine.
That's the one.
He's talking about treatments for COVID that were not allowed early in the pandemic.
I get it, but he veers into conspiracy theories quite a lot, and I don't know whether he's trying to create some sort of thing that they have in America, like with their various shock jocks, either Joe Rogan, for example.
Yeah.
But he's not the person who he used to be, and I agree. I think he has lost the plot because he's a very talented man and a very talented comedian. So
very funny.
But all he's doing, Jerry Hayes, is calling out the overreach of Big Pharma. In relation to the vaccine, getting kids and babies vaccinated, that was purely profit rather than public health.
I'm not sure.
He's talked about digital ID, cashless society. He's right to raise concerns about the idea of a global government, for example. Yeah. Who are the World Economic Forum, and why does the World Health Organization want to have a pandemic treaty which would allow us to have lockdowns without asking our own parliament.
Well, of course he's right. I mean, the world is run by shape-changing lizards.
And Illuminati.
And don't forget
all of those points I've raised are valid.
To a certain, I've never.
The WHO, the pandemic treaty, that's creepy.
I love you to bits, but I remember when you were doing your show and you said, "I will take off my mask. This is the end." And I thought, how's he going to get out the bloody building?
Well, that was when I was, my old employers.
Yes.
But I think the problem with George Monbiot is he doesn't like Russell Brand anymore because Russell Brand is saying things he doesn't agree with, and he's labelling him as far right or conspiracy theorist.
Well, I disagree with everybody here because I don't think Russell Brand has an ounce of talent. I've always thought I've never thought he had a plot. So all this stuff about is Russell Brand losing the plot? I mean, yeah, right now he's talking about UFOs and things like that. I agree with lots of what you said, Mark, but I think Russell Brand is a...
He did a very funny...
He never had the plot to lose.
Never had a plot to lose.
Briefly, is he a bit of a tit? Because
yeah, that's what I mean. That's a polite way of putting it.
In Berlin, a woman has taken the local authority to court because she was topless at a pool, and she's now fought for her right to go topless. That would never happen in Britain. Do we have a problem with being topless in this country?
No.
You don't see it much on Britain's beaches.
You're talking about women being topless. You're talking about women being
Mainly
topless.
women,
Why not just be clear?
Well, exactly. Female
Because that's
topless.
the only thing. I don't care about going topless or not, but I just think, why, when I see a really hot day and I see a man walking down the street looking absolutely horrific in a pair of shorts, and I think, well, why can't I, I mean, I would look...
But you're not going to walk down the high street with your boobs out.
No, you're not, but why not?
Yeah, but some men do.
Well, there you go.
But why not?
Can I thank my
man boobs can be a lot more frightening than women.
for staying fully clothed. We're back tomorrow at 8. Thanks for your company. Headliners is next.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
Is the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236,
And YouView, Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a